Hillsborough Planning Commission, the official local planning agency for the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Planning Commission provides innovative leadership and long-range vision that contributes to the creation of a thriving, prosperous community that offers opportunity, fairness, and choice in how we live, move, learn, work, and play. For more information about the Planning Commission, please call 813-272-5940. Follow us on social media or visit our website at planhillsborough.org.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the May 9th, 2022 regular meeting of the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation is encouraged. To minimize feedback in the audio, all participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments when your name is called. You will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for a local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org. That's planner@plancom.org. For action items, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chair. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I would like you to join me in standing, and I will lead us in the prayer and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with praise for your mighty power and guidance. We thank you for this day, and thank you, too, for the many blessings in our lives, for our great country, and for the opportunity to live in freedom. We ask you for your blessings on our leaders, and we ask that you give each one of us here today the wisdom to make the right choices so that our decisions will be in the best interest of the people of Hillsborough County. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. With that, I would like to break here and introduce our new planning commissioner, ex officio commissioner from the school board, Ms. Michelle Orton, sorry. And if you'd like to say a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself.
There we go. Michelle Orton. I am the new general manager over growth management and planning. This is my 4th week here, with the school board. Grateful to be here. I am from Polk County. I was working there as senior planner with the Polk County Land Development, and I'm really excited to be here today. This is a different type of planning commission than I'm used to, but I'm excited and hope to do some good things.
All right. Happy to have you aboard. All right. And with that, I'd like to ask the clerk to go ahead and swear Ms. Orton in.
Good afternoon, Ms. Orton. If you could stand, raise your hand, and repeat after me into the microphone, please. Your name?
I, Michelle Orton.
A Planning Commission appointee.
A Planning Commission appointee.
Of the Hillsborough County Planning Commission.
Of the Hillsborough County Planning Commission.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
That I will faithfully perform the duties.
That I will faithfully perform the duties.
Of my appointed office.
Of my appointed office.
In a fair, equitable, ethical, and dignified manner.
In a fair, equitable.
Equitable.
Equitable. Oh, boy.
Ethical.
We're going to have to do that one again.
All right, let's try. In a fair.
In a fair.
Equitable.
Equitable.
ethical,
ethical,
and dignified manner,
and dignified manner,
and in compliance with all applicable laws
and all laws
of the state of Florida,
of the state of Florida,
Hillsborough County,
Hillsborough County,
and the practices and procedures
and the practices and procedures
established by the Planning Commission.
established by the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
All right, welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I would like to ask the clerk to go ahead and do the roll call.
Good afternoon. Bernstein,
Here.
Buzza,
Here.
Cardenas,
Here.
Fernandez, Handy, Kress,
Here.
Loic, Powell,
Here.
Orton,
Here.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Joseph.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the following meetings. The regular meeting, March 14th, 2022. Public hearing on the City of Tampa redistricting, March 14th, 2022. The public hearing on the City of Plant City, public hearing, March 14th, 2022. Regular meeting, April 11th, 2022. And public hearing on City of Tampa redistricting, April 11th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion. We approve.
All right, a motion to approve by Commissioner Powell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second to that motion by Commissioner Bernstein. Seeing no other discussions or lights on, I'll ask the clerk to do a roll call vote on this item.
Bernstein,
Yes.
Buzza,
Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
And we wanted to let the clerk also know that Commissioner Handy walked in. She's here now.
Was Commissioner Handy present for that last vote?
No, she didn't vote for the last vote.
All right. Thank you. Just wanted to verify.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Did Commissioner Handy need to have her vote recorded for that?
So, all right. Sorry, a little power up here. Where are we now? Public input. All right. Did anybody sign up for public input? Let me just double check with Lionel. I don't believe so. For items not on the agenda, no, I don't think so. All right. So moving on to action items. First item is 4A, proposed amendment to the community redevelopment plan for the Channel District, and the presenter is Jennifer Malone.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Malone here with your Planning Commission staff. I'm presenting on the amendment to the Community Redevelopment Plan for the Channel District Community Redevelopment Area. And can everybody see this screen, Lionel? Yes? Okay. Okay. So a little background, the new Channel District plan is going to completely amend and replace the old one. It's a brand new plan. It brought a lot of stuff up to date, and the Planning Commission review is required under Section 163.360, Section 4 in Florida statute. So that is why this is before the Planning Commission for a consistency finding. The proposed plan seeks to promote the use of vacant or underutilized land, as well as promote housing opportunities for the growing population. And the Planning Commission staff did find it consistent with several comprehensive plan future land use objectives and policies related to our mixed-use infill development and transit-oriented development. As most of you know, a lot of the Channel District, it's near the Tico streetcar line, and it's very much, the plan is promoting that transit-oriented development, as well as utilization of vacant or unutilized land and increased housing opportunities. So with that, staff recommends consistency. I have Jeff Burton, who is the Channel District Community Redevelopment Area Manager, and Michelle Van Lawn with the City of Tampa here, and I believe they're here to answer any questions. And Morris Massey's on the line too. He's a City of Tampa attorney.
All right, so no more presentations? That's what I'm saying. All right. Are there, public comment on this one? No one signed up for public comment on this item, so are there questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Kress.
Thank you. I had a question related to a topic we're going to hear later, which is, more development within the coastal high hazard zone. And I wanted to know if that was addressed in the plan at all.
I might turn it over to Jeff for that, or Michelle.
Dr. Jeff Burton with the City of Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency. The CRA has to follow and comply with the rules and laws of the City of Tampa. When it comes to the coastal high hazard area, the city has to have a plan in place, and they do, and we would have to comply with that. One of the benefits of having a redevelopment agency along the coastal waterline is that we can actually use the CRA to help the city meet the standards of the coastal high hazard area. So whatever the City of Tampa's requirements are for residential units being built in that area, we would have to meet and comply with that, and that would be one of the functions that we would do.
If I may follow up, clarification. So the plan welcomes new development into the entire Channel District.
Right.
CRA area, right? Okay.
It does, but
Okay.
it still has to comply with the requirements of the City of Tampa, especially with a state requirement like the coastal hazard area.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kress. Were there any more comments or discussion of this item from the commissioners? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close public comment on this item and open the floor up for motions from the commissioners. Commissioner
I
Kress.
can keep talking if you'd like. So I'd like to motion to approve the CRA, the Channel District Community Redevelopment Agency Strategic Action Plan. No? Community Redevelopment Plan, sorry, consistent with the goals, objectives, policies of the comprehensive plan.
All right, this motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Kress. Second, Commissioner Bernstein.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion for consistency finding by Commissioner Kress. A second to that motion by Commissioner Bernstein. Is there any more discussion, this item from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to do a roll call vote at this time.
Bernstein,
Yes.
Buzza,
Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Handy, Handy,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes?
Powell,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have 4B, TPO Apportionment Plan. Presenter is Melissa Zornita.
Good afternoon, Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. The agenda item before you was placed on your agenda at your request at the last meeting. It's to update you all that the Transportation Planning Organization's Policy Committee at their April meeting voted to modify the voting apportionment of the Transportation Planning Organization Board. This is a process where the apportionment of votes is looked at every 10 years after the census to see how the population is shifted And in this case, the proposed changes that the policy committee has moved forward to the TPO board are as follows. One, they would like to increase the number of county commissioners on the Transportation Planning Organization Board to 7. And then they would like to make all of the agency representatives, so that's the representative of the Expressway Authority, HART, the Aviation Authority, the Port Authority, and the Planning Commission, to be non-voting advisors. That would result in the TPO having 13 members, all of whom are elected officials, 7 county commissioners, 3 city council members from the city of Tampa, 1 from Plant City, 1 from Temple Terrace, and 1 school board member. The reasons that the policy committee articulated for these changes were, 1, that there's a difficulty in coordinating with the agency representatives about transportation investments when their communications have to be in the sunshine because they're all board members. So if they have to communicate with the HART CEO about something, it's difficult because their communications have to be at a board meeting. Also, there were some concerns about the proportion of board members who were non-elected officials and potentially less accountable to residents. This does not have a specific recommendation, except that for you all to discuss it and provide Commissioner Powell, who is your representative at the TPO board, some direction and feedback on this issue. I made it an action item in case you wanted to take any sort of motion, but you don't have to take a motion. The TPO board meeting will be this Wednesday, and so it's timely for you all to give Commissioner Powell some feedback and your thoughts about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zornita. Did anyone have any questions, comments, discussion? I had a question just to open it up, I guess, for you, Ms. Zornita. In going over the revised apportionment language, they quote the Florida state statutes. I don't have it in front of me, but I think one of them is in reference to all members of the TPO board being voting members, being required to be voting members, or being required to be elected, being required to be elected.
I don't believe that that is in statute because the current composition of the board complies with statute. I think.
Okay. That was where I was going to with that.
Yeah. To my knowledge, it is not a requirement that all of the TPO members have to be elected officials.
Do you have that listing of the grounds that it was like a bullet point list?
It was in the packet that I provided?
Yeah, TPO, here, I got it here. You can open it up. Apportionment plan change, 2022, let's see here. It's in the draft document. The very, almost last page here, summary item. Table 2 shows the proposed TPO membership apportionment plan. It meets all applicable federal and state requirements, including item number 4, item number
Yeah, I see
5.
in 5, yeah.
Oh, yeah, all voting members are elected officials of general purpose governments and elected school board members. And then it quotes, there's a period and it quotes the state statute. So that reads as if all voting members have to be elected officials. That's what I'm misunderstanding. Is that misquoted there or in the summary for the grounds or?
I would have to look up that section of statute to find out.
I was just thinking the TPO should probably be a little more careful how they summarize state law there, because it looks a little misleading. It made me think, well, if they all have to be elected, why do we even have anyone on there in the first place?
Right, right.
So we might want to look back at the state statute if we're quoting it there.
Absolutely.
So that was the one thing that I noticed and know. Did anyone else have any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The state statute, from what I've read, there is not a requirement for anyone on the TPO where the whole body is to be, elected officials. There are, actually provisions that allow for non-elected officials to be on there. That's actually how I've read it and understand it, which is how when you go back through the history of the board and how the Planning Commission, was able to get a seat back when Commissioner Dowdy, was here, and he was a large part of that. That's actually how that was brought about. So it doesn't read like that, although I did have a question, and I don't know if it's just right for Melissa. When I was reading through like the statute, I see this as the Hillsborough County taking over the board, essentially, and it's really what it's being proposed as when you have a 13-member board and you have 7 people, from the county commission. So in my viewpoint, they are essentially taking over, the board. And when that happens, how I read the statute, not only does the governor have to approve, but then there still has to be other bodies that are from other, like the school board, have to be put onto the board as well, including the planning commission as well. And so, but ultimately everything is still up to the purview of the governor to, approve, that apportionment. But what I would say to, the board members here, having been through these, meetings, and I see this as, a takeover of politicians, where they're taking away I wouldn't say like the voice of like the people, but you're taking, some very important people who are in the transportation field. And I did bring this up, at the board meeting, and one of the, commissioners followed up with my comment and said that, that wasn't, the purpose. There's no, accountability, but we're just as accountable, in my viewpoint, to, the citizens. I mean, we have to adhere to sunshine. I mean, we are appointed by, elected officials. So, I mean, we are government, we are public officials, in a way. So it's something that I don't, agree with. And I have a concern that you're putting, I think the city of Tampa would be underrepresented, personally, for them not to have, equal representation there, especially when you've got the upcoming Transportation Act. You're going to need that city of Tampa vote to get that through. So the statute allows for them to have up to 25 members. So if you're going to want to have only elected officials, then why not all elected officials from all the municipalities, to where there's really an equal voice? I mean, this really, I'm not saying that this particular board that's installed and elected right now would do so, but 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, if the apportionment, doesn't, change again, it's my experience, I haven't seen too many politicians give up power once they have sole power. And so once that happens, what if there's, a board where there's just a division between the county and the city and everyone else, and it's really going to be up to the county to ultimately decide how they want to, run everything. And to me, that's a monopoly. And I just don't think that's necessarily right. So that's some of my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Yes, Commissioner Bernstein.
Yeah, I have a few random thoughts and questions also for our executive director and perhaps for the group as well as you, Commissioner Powell, because I know you've put in the time most recently on the TPO, and it was the MPO, as I recall, before that. Starting with this question, we're obviously not alone in this from an agency perspective. Could we quickly just go over the other agencies that are going to be impacted by this proposal along with ourselves?
Yes, it would be the Expressway Authority, HART, the Aviation Authority, the Port Authority, and the Planning Commission. DOT has already been moved to a non-voting advisory status. That happened, I believe, in the last apportionment plan because of the issues of discussing projects in the sunshine.
So I recognize it may not be our primary responsibility to address this from the perspective of those agencies, but they certainly all have among other things in common, they're all tasked with administering some aspect of transportation within the county. And I will say I completely agree with Commissioner Powell in that the Planning Commission has a valuable role to play in that discussion. And so I find myself asking, if we're going to continue designating a representative from this body to serve on the TPO, only to find that henceforth they will have no voting responsibility, it does beg the question to me, what is our responsibility vis-a-vis that representative? What role will they play, and is there any attempt to wrestle with that, at least from our commission's perspective? Has anyone seen any attempt to answer that question? What do we do if we're not voting, in other words?
Well, I would just share this, that the other agencies are represented by their director or otherwise by staff. So you all are unique in that you provide a board member, which is a considerable amount of time, as Commissioner Powell knows. So that would certainly, if this went forward, that would be an option that myself or another staff person could sit in that position to represent the Planning Commission's interests if that was the desire of the board.
And it looks to me like this would be a pretty significant move in terms of the percentage increase of members of the TPO who are, in their words, accountable to the electorate, taking us from where we are now to 100%. And it looks to me like the very last page of the attachment on this agenda item offers at least a general summary of what some of the other regions are doing that have corollary transportation agencies. And give or take, it seems that about half of them are at 100%, but that leaves another half that are below that figure and ranges from 63% to, say, 93 to 95%. And so I would just maybe point this out for the other members of our commission, that it is being done essentially in one fell swoop, or at least that's what this proposal attempts to do, as opposed to being done gradually. And because of that, I find myself asking a question: are there other means by which to increase the number of members of the TPO who are directly accountable, if you subscribe to that notion, to the electorate? And one means is the one that I think Commissioner Powell suggested, at least indirectly, which is to increase the size of the TPO. And I just wonder whether that's even been contemplated. I'm not always a fan of these large, unwieldy agencies and bodies, but it seems to me that that would have been another way to approach this, instead of simply approaching this as a zero-sum game, which is really what this proposal seems to represent.
Oh, hang on for just a moment.
It's okay if he responds, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to ask a question, sort of a follow-up. I don't believe in any of the other municipalities that have other like TPOs or MPOs. They don't have a planning commission like us, right? They don't have a central planning. We are, Hillsborough County is completely unique to all of these other areas, correct?
Well, there are a couple of places like Forward Pinellas that is a consolidated MPO and planning agency. But we did look through all of the counties in Florida and did not find any MPO, TPO that had the planning agency as a voting representative on their board, except for us. We're the only one. So we are unique in that regard. There may be other planning agencies, not exactly like us, but similar to us, but they are not voting members on their TPO boards.
Okay, and within these other ones that are listed on the diagram, do any of those have a planning commission that is set up how we're set up to do, the planning for, those municipalities and those counties?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, which that's kind of one of my point. I mean, because of our unique structure and being the agency that does, the long-term planning, I think that it would be an oversight for us not just for us not to have a vote but all of the other ones, but I mean, especially us, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Kress.
Thank you. I sit on the TPO's Livable Roadways Committee, and we had a long discussion about this as well, with lots of concerns from the members. You know, I think we need to strengthen that bond between land use and transportation, not make it more separate. There was also a lot of concern raised about the disproportionate amount of traffic that Tampa the influx of people that the city of Tampa in particular gets because of commuting. So it's not really fair to just look at where people live. It's where are they actually traveling to and through. So that's just kind of a little bit of a different angle to consider it. So personally, I'm not supportive of the proposal as at hand.
Thank you, Commissioner Kress. Commissioner Handy.
I support the comments that both Commissioner Powell and Commissioner Kress, it's the first thing I thought of, politicizing the TPO. And I served on the TPO CAC for 2+ years before I joined this board. And I'm looking at this table, the non-voting advisor, I'm like, how many advisors do they need? They've got the CAC, which is a pretty robust group. It was a really good, involved, I thought it represented the community quite well. And personally, I wouldn't want to be a non-voting advisor, because now it's like you're an advisory advisor. I mean, it's just how many levels are you gonna go with that? So yeah, this does not sit well with me either. And I think, as someone else had said, that some of these other transportation entities need to be involved. I think they have far deeper knowledge base of transportation and issues than just the elected officials that are always going to be thinking about the political fallout associated with each of their votes. These other people, not so much. So, and again, some of this opinion does come from being involved in the TPO CAC, and they're a terrific advisory group, and the rest of these non-voting advisors will just have no teeth, and I don't see the point.
Thank you, Commissioner Handy. Yeah, to Commissioner Bernstein's original point also, I found that also it made me wonder why we would even have anyone, even staff or yourself, Ms. Ornita. Ultimately, the way this agency's set up, we're the umbrella over the TPO. So we're redoubling our efforts, especially if we have no voting power. You know, it's going to come to us once the TPO approves it for some sort of review or something anyway. So, you know, I don't know. It just seems weird to me. Seems weird to me. And I concur with everyone's comments here. Commissioner Bernstein, please.
Just one last point from my perspective, and this is just a personal observation, but whenever a plan's put forward ostensibly to restore accountability to the electorate in this format, I tend to be extremely skeptical that that's the true motivation for this, and that's my own personal viewpoint. I'm not casting anyone else on this commission, but I hold that concern. And you know, to the extent that accountability, if that's the word, is important, I've not yet seen any compelling arguments why it should be accountable to the public in the way they've described. I think an equally plausible argument can honestly be made that it shouldn't be directly accountable to the electorate 100% throughout from member to member. And to Commissioner Handy's point, I completely agree that in doing so, that's exactly what you are doing when you politicize an agency. And if there's a function that's as important as transportation in our region, I'd like to see it. But all the more reason, I think, why, in my view, this agency should consist at least in part of voting members who hail from our commission and also from these other agencies mentioned, who bring some internal expertise, hence their reason for existing. Thea, Hart, the Aviation Authority, and our commission all serve a noble purpose. And in all the years that we've had voting authority on the TPO and the MPO before, never once have I heard this concern mentioned, which caused me to ask whether this is simply a solution in search of a problem.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Yes, Commissioner Handy.
Commissioner Bernstein's comments and as well as Commissioner Kress's comments made me think of something else, is that maybe this needs to be an even more diverse group because of like the comment about how intertwined land use and transportation is. So we have elected officials and we have transportation, essentially transportation bodies. Well, maybe that's not enough. Maybe we need, I don't know, EPC, someone from EPC on there, someone from the DEP perhaps, maybe the Water Management District, other entities that might be able to bring together that link between land use and growth and transportation altogether without it being like, and I am actually in favor of DOT not being a voting member, because I don't want this to sound too strong, but I think they can be biased when it comes to some of these transportation projects that they're voting for or against, I guess. But yeah, that would be what Commissioner Bernstein said made me really think that if anything, we need more diversity and not less.
Thank you, Commissioner Handy. Yeah, I wanted to make a comment about the DOT thing. I think another reason also that the DOT stepped down, I thought, was because of the conflict of when the money comes down through the state, it hits the DOT once, and then when it filters down to the county, it doesn't make sense for the state people to come back around to the county level and then have another vote. So I don't think it all had to do with trying to subvert the sunshine laws as get through the difficulties that the sunshine laws present to them. So I think it had to do with some other things also. Any other comments? Yes.
A quick question, Melissa, you said that it's the executive directors for the other agencies. Who is the representative for DOT?
David Gwynn is usually there, the secretary for this district.
Oh, the district secretary for District 7?
Yeah, he
Okay.
usually attends the meetings.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right. Are there any more comments, or did Commissioner Powell, were you looking for any direction? It sounds like you have a pretty good direction ahead of yourself there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had asked for this to be brought up because I find that this is a really important issue, that it's going to have a lasting effect for at least the next 10 years until we have another census, and hopefully we don't have another COVID situation, delays the census, and all those things. But if I wanted the board to fully have an opportunity to discuss and hear not just my point of view, but I also wanted to hear everyone else's, because we are a body of multiple thoughts and different people, and I just wanted to everyone to understand what is coming at us as citizens, not just the board, and see where everyone's thoughts were. So I appreciate Melissa putting this on the agenda, and if we wanted to take any sort of action, whether I was for or against it, I'll certainly do whatever the board ultimately decided. But if we want, or probably it's more your discretion, if you think that we need to have a vote on how you all would like for me to go in on Wednesday and vote, because I believe it will be for us for a vote. I don't know if it has come through and been approved by all of the subcommittees. My understanding, Melissa, is that it had to go to all the subcommittees and had to be approved by the subcommittees before it floated up to the TPO.
Yes, and my understanding is it will be before the TPO for consideration for a vote on Wednesday.
And so it's passed all the other subcommittees?
I don't know whether or not they all supported it.
Okay.
But it has been heard by all of the subcommittees.
Okay, I thought we had to all approve, not us as a planning commission, but like all of the other boards needed to weigh in and approve, and then,
I think they had to weigh in. I don't know
Okay.
that they have to approve.
Okay, got it, all right. So anyways, I feel like I have an understanding where the board is. I know not everyone has spoken, but again, if you want to take a roll call vote or, anything.
Can we do that, Tracy?
I'm happy to do that, or whatever you all feel is best for the record.
You can provide direction, although I'm inclined to agree with Commissioner Powell. There seems to be a consensus of the board on direction.
Right.
I think either one of those approaches is appropriate.
Yes, Commissioner Kress.
Just maybe a request. I think it would be helpful for Commissioner Powell to see the comments from the other committees this has gone through. I mean, I know at the Livable Roadways Committee that I referenced, we had some specific, just objections to it, so it might be helpful for you to see that before Wednesday.
I can get those to him, absolutely.
All right. Any more discussion on this item from the commissioners then? All right. Seeing none, well, thank you for the information. Thank you, Commissioner Powell, for bringing it to our attention. And we'll move on to our next item of business, which is C. Action item 4C, Hillsborough County Land Development Code Text Amendments 220515, Adult Care Facilities. And the presenter is Carla Llanos.
Carla Llanos with Planning Commission staff. This is the Land Development Code Text Amendment 22-0515. It's adult care facilities. There we go. Apologize. It is a publicly initiated plan amendment, text amendment. I apologize. So the proposed amendment will eliminate certain size restrictions for adult care facilities located specifically in non-residential zoning districts. So this won't affect the residential portion. It does clarify locational requirements for larger adult care facilities, and it will add a parking lot design standards for these new facilities as well. Now, we reviewed it for consistency with our comprehensive plan. We looked specifically at objectives 9 and policy 9.2, and we found it consistent. So at this point, we're recommending Planning Commission staff to, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed Land Development Code text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the future of Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan for the Unincorporated Hillsborough County. So right now we have, I believe, Development Services staff online, so they're going to provide a little bit more explanation as in terms of the text amendment. So.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tom Hisnay with Hillsborough County Development Services. Yasmin has provided a summary of it. There are no changes to this amendment from the language that you saw at your workshop, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. We did not have anyone sign up for public comment on this item, so we will go on ahead and open it up to the planning commissioners for questions or comments on the item. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't recall having a workshop. Maybe I wasn't there for that workshop. When did we have that?
When was the workshop made?
In May.
Tom, can you answer when the workshop was?
Yeah, Israel, do you happen to have that date at hand?
I do. The first one, this is Israel Monsanto, Hillsborough County. The workshop was on March 14th.
And the Planning Commission was involved? Really? Oh, must have missed that one. Okay. One of the questions I had was in regards to the parking. Is it a design, whereas we're just needing like sidewalks, or are we saying that we need to have a certain amount of like parking, like period? Could you explain that to me?
Correct. When I reviewed the information, it did say it was for sidewalk placement, but since Tom was the one who worked quite a bit on it, I'm pretty sure he has a little bit more information with that as well.
So parking requirements for adult care facilities have been in a land development code for a long time. This amendment is going to actually add some design requirements for those parking lots. In the workshops and the hearings with the Board of County Commissioners, They thought that it would be good to basically borrow some of the parking lot design standards from childcare facilities that the code has and import them into the adult care facilities. It would be paragraphs E and F that you see. And so basically it says that spaces that are adjacent to the facility will be fronted with wheel stops and a sidewalk of a certain width. It also leads directly to the entrance of the facility. It also has that some standards that if a circular driveway is provided for pickup and drop off, and there's some design standards for that, which again were taken from our standards for childcare facilities at the direction of the board to import them into this amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
One quick question about that, just looking this over, I'm pretty much in agreement with it. Is the requirements this would be going forward, it's not gonna, there is a grandfathering in of existing facilities and their parking, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. The design requirements are going to apply only to new adult care facilities that are established after the effective date of this amendment.
Okay.
Also, yep.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Bernstein.
Just a point of clarification, and it may not be all that significant, but if I heard it right, the workshop was slated for March 14th of this year. That would have been the date, same date we had both a public hearing and a board meeting. So it would be unusual for us to hold a workshop on the same day.
Yeah, it was a briefing on your regular agenda.
Oh, so it took
That's what they're
place during
calling
the
a
board meeting.
workshop, yeah.
So that's the terminology.
Yeah.
Got it. That's helpful, thanks.
All right. Were there any more questions or comments on this item from the commissioners? Any more discussion? All right, not seeing any, I will go ahead and close the public comment on this item at this time and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we find Hillsborough County LDC Text Amendment 22-0515 consistent with the future Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan, and that we forward it along to the County Board of Commissioners for their consideration.
All right. Motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Bernstein.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Buzza. Is there any more discussion from the commissioners on this item? Not seeing any at this time. I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and do a roll call vote on this item.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Buzza?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Handy?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have item 4C2, 22-0516, appeals from the Land Use Hearing Officer to Land Use Appeals Board. And the presenter is Jillian Massey.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jillian Massey with your Planning Commission staff, and it's a pleasure to finally meet you all in person today. Today before you, we have Hillsborough County Land Development Code Text Amendment 22-0516, which is appeals of decisions of the administrator and land use hearing officer. This is a publicly initiated amendment to the Land Development Code, or the LDC. The request before you is to amend two sections of the Land Development Code relating to appeals. Currently, these two sections state that appeal hearings shall be limited to the record on appeal and shall consist of oral argument by the administrator, the party appealing the decision, and any interveners, each of whom may be represented by legal counsel. County staff has found this limit on appeal hearing representation unduly restrictive and recommends that it be expanded to include parties who served as designated representative in the matter that is subject to the appeal. This will allow appellants and interveners to avoid costs for additional legal counsel if they choose, and continue to utilize the services of their prior representatives who have direct experience and, in many cases, professional expertise in the matter that is being appealed, while still limiting the record of the case as required.
So the proposed text in both of these sections is to add and/or by the party who served as their designated representative in the matter that is subject of the appeal. And this is with regards to representation for appeals. We've reviewed this text amendment for consistency with the comprehensive plan and have found that it furthers the intent of future land use element objective 9 and policy 9.2, which discusses how all developments must meet or exceed all land development regulations as established and adopted by Hillsborough County and other governmental bodies. And Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed Land Development Code text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated Hillsborough County. And with that, we do have county staff on the line again with us to give some more detail on this text amendment.
Commissioners, your staff has provided very thorough explanation of this amendment, and there are no changes from the language that you saw in your prior briefing, so I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Hisnay. No one signed up for comment on this one, so we will turn it over to the planning commissioners for questions, comments on this item. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to monopolize the time, but this is something I really agree with. I actually used to serve on the LUAB several years ago, and this was brought up by a few people, who came before us and having to switch, representation councils. And as you know, some of the attorneys on here, when you have to switch a case and you got to get another attorney involved to get them caught up, it becomes quite expensive, for them. So something I'm fully support, and I hope everyone else on this board does as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Are there any more questions or comments on this item from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time. I'll go ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we find LDC text amendment 22-0516 consistent with the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan and for this recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, we have a motion for consistency finding. Commissioner Buzzer?
I'll second.
All right. Second to that motion for consistency finding. That second was by Commissioner Buzzer. The motion was by Commissioner Powell. Is there any more discussion of the item? Questions from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time. I will ask the clerk to go ahead and do a roll call vote on this item.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Buzza?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes?
Powell?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. All right. The next item we have up is 4C3, 22-0517, daycare parking regulations, and the presenter is Carla Llanos.
Again, Carla Llanos for the record. I'm with Planning Commission staff. This is the Land Development Code Text Amendment 22-0517. It's for child care facilities. This is a publicly initiated text amendment, and the purpose or the request is to remove or strike through language that is a little redundant in the code currently for parking, and we're going to clarify also sidewalk placement. Again, there's not a need to keep the current language the way it is. It's already addressed. Parking standards is already addressed in another section of the Land Development Code, so we're just striking through the redundant language. We did review it. It is consistent with our comprehensive plan. It furthers the objective 9 and policy 9.2. And at this point, Planning Commission staff is recommending that the Land Development Code text amendment be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners because it is consistent with our goals, policies, and objectives. And then we have also Development Services staff. They will give another presentation as well.
All right, Commissioners, currently and for a long time, the Land Development Code has had parking requirements for child care facilities. The code also had language that required patron parking had to be located adjacent to the facility and be served by a sidewalk that led directly to the facility entrance. However, the code didn't provide any guidance on how much of the total required parking was required for patron parking. Staff had proposed amending this language in the code to better identify the percentage of total parking that was required patron parking. However, in meetings with the county commission, they suggested that perhaps the better route to take here would be to simply eliminate the reference to required patron parking on the basis that child care facilities, as well as a lot of businesses, typically require their employees to park in spaces that are, let's say, on the edge of the parking lot, leaving the adjacent spaces for their patrons. We thought this was a great idea, a simplified way to get at what we're looking for here. And so the proposed amendment will remove the reference to required patron parking while keeping the sidewalk requirements in place for all parking spaces that are adjacent to the facility. I'm available for any questions. Once again, this language has not changed from the briefing that your prior briefing.
All right, thank you. We did not have anyone sign up for public comment on this item, so we will turn it over to the commissioners for questions and discussions this item. Not seeing any lights in the room, I will then go ahead and close the public comment and open it up for motions on this item from the commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we find Hillsborough County LDC Text Amendment 22-0517 consistent with the future Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan, and that we pass it along to the County Board of Commissioners for their consideration.
All right, that's a motion of consistency.
Second.
Motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Bernstein, a second to that motion by Commissioner Powell. Is there any more discussion of this item from the commissioners? Questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to do a roll call vote at this time.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Buzza?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Fernandez? Excuse me. Handy?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. All right, our next item up for business is 444 22-0518 golf courses, and the presenter is Jillian Massey.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. This is Jillian Massey with your Planning Commission staff. This is LDC Text Amendment 22-0518 relating to golf clubs and country clubs. This is a publicly initiated text amendment to the Land Development Code. The request seeks to amend two sections of the Land Development Code relating to the approval process for new golf courses and country clubs. The amendment would modify the approval process for this use and would require a planned development district approval by the Board of County Commissioners. Currently, new golf clubs and golf courses, and country clubs are currently permitted by right in all zoning districts, with the exception of manufacturing, university, community, and special public interest airport districts. So this amendment would require that new golf courses and country clubs would have to go through the planned development district approval process. Planning Commission staff has reviewed this proposed text amendment for consistency with the comprehensive plan and have found it to be consistent with the future land use element objective 9 and policy 9.2. And Planning Commission staff recommends that this LDC text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated Hillsborough County. And we do have Tom Hisney on the line to provide some further information.
So, Commissioners, again, this amendment was directed by the Board of County Commissioners. Let me stress that this amendment will apply only to new golf courses that are established after the effective date of this amendment. It will have no effect on existing golf courses. In addition to the requirement for a planned development district for new golf courses, this amendment also includes language pertaining to existing golf courses in the county that are in standard zoning districts. Or research has shown there's about 4 courses, and we did not want this amendment to create a non-conforming use situation for those, because that carries a lot of baggage with it. And so the amendment also has language that specifically identifies existing golf courses that were, legally established and in operation on the date of the amendment, that they will be deemed conforming uses unless they wish to add more land area sometime in the future to their golf course, at which point then they would fall subject to the new requirement for a plan development. Available for any questions.
All right, thank you. We had a couple people sign up in the public comment for this item. So I will remind everyone 3 minutes per person, and be sure to state your name for the benefit of the clerk. First person I have up is Michael Scheedinger.
Hi, my name is Michael Scheidinger. I live in Sun City Center, Florida. My concern with the new or revised LDC section 11.0306, in the way it is written, does not require a public hearing if an existing golf course or country club would close and it would be used for residential housing. As it is the case with the Sandpiper Golf Course in Sun City Center, Florida, the current owner wants to turn most of the golf course into residential housing. Sun City Center will lose the Sandpiper Golf Course for all its members in public play, and many homeowners will lose value on their dream homes with a golf course view. So therefore, I would recommend that this should be looked at very carefully. No public golf course or public play golf course land use changes should be made without public hearings or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scheidinger. All right. Next up, we have Fred Kungle.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Fred Kungle. I live at 1219 Knightsgate Court in Sun City Center, Florida. The purpose of my speech is for 2 reasons. First, about a month ago, Club Link, the owner of Sandpiper Golf Course, Renaissance Golf Course, and Scepter Golf Course, plus some other owned but non-active golf course sites in Sun City Center, had a meeting at the community center there to tell the residents that Club Link intends to close the Sandpiper Golf Course and all the facilities in 2023. They intend to build residential commercial housing and duplex housing units and possibly a senior citizen facility living on that said course. About 750 residential members of the area attended that meeting, and we had approximately 300 people waiting in line to get in, but because of the amount of people in the building, we couldn't allow them. Plus, we had a couple of hundred in the parking lot. Everybody was outside trying to mull around to find out what the heck is going on. Bottom line is that the Sun City residents are vehemently set against the building of residential housing on any existing golf course and have already circulated a petition signed by our residents not to allow this to happen on the Sandpiper Golf Course. And the unofficial number is somewhere around 8,000 people signed that. So you're talking about a lot of wet hens and roosters. trying to find my space. I got bifocal, so I'm sorry. This community is at a maximum capacity right now relative to traffic and safety. We've got low water pressure, which is a real problem. I went outside and put a meter on it, pressure meter, 28 pounds. Couldn't even flush the toilet bowl. The sewer backs up. You people have no idea because you don't live there. That's why we're here to tell you. It's crowded. And the infrastructure problems is already a major issue. And right now, the road egress issues, especially on the State Road 674, which had a modification, which in my opinion was not done well, but that's my opinion. And it turned out not to solve any of the congestion problems in Sun City Center.
Mr. Kungle?
I have 1 second more.
You've reached your time limit, so if you could please bring your comments to a close for us
Okay,
really quickly.
second reason, I want to confirm from you, the Planning Commission, that the Hillsborough County Land Department Code Amendment said therein, please do not give the owners of existing golf courses the right to bypass public hearing that would change the status of existing golf courses to residential and commercial use without going through a public hearing by the Hillsborough Planning Board and ultimately the County Commission for their approval. I respectfully request a yes or no answer to this simple planning question.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Kunkel. Your time is up, so we'll have
Okay.
to ask you to sit back
Thank you.
down now. 3 minutes per person, and I'd like to remind everyone else we want to keep it fair between everyone who's here. 3 minutes per person.
All right.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next up on our list, we have, and pardon me for the last name, William C. LeBeau.
Good afternoon. And you did say it correctly. It is William C. LeBeau. In section 110306, it states, a conforming use without the need for a non-conforming use review. And the intent statement, last sentence reads, additionally, enlargement, replacement, or modification of a golf course or clubhouse would be allowed without need for rezoning to planned development. Replacement of existing golf course. What does this mean? On the surface, it looks like a developer could change the golf course to a building development without a review by the zoning board. If true, this takes out community comment and concerns, and it fast-tracks it for the developer to just submitting necessary requests for permits to build. Local residents will have no say as far as the potential for a diminished value on the property. For example, $30,000 extra for a golf course view will be lost in property value. Verona residents in Sun City Center could face that. Again, no public hearings will take place. We in Sun City have recently been notified of such a change. Coincidentally, this LDC text, Amendment 220158 or 518, is up for adoption. Why now? Were there any lobbyists of a concerned party wanting to change the code on pre-existing golf courses? We know we can't stop a golf course from being shut down. It's evident that this owner of this golf course wanted to wait for the value of the market to go up. Land value would be great. Their lack of effort and monies that they invested in the past prove this out. This amendment not only affects our situation in Sun City, but all existing golf courses in the county. Without a public hearing, concerns from the community affected would not come to light, i.e. safety, infrastructure, water concerns, sewage, traffic, etc. First responders in our area have enough problems with traffic to get medical attention for the elderly. It's currently impacted due to heavy traffic on 674. We are asking to rescind this request for change and have a public hearing so developers won't have a fast track to change the landscape at the detriment of the surrounding community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. LeBeau. All right, next up on our list, we have pardon me again for the last name, William Stinchcomb. Oh.
Good afternoon. I'm William Stinchcomb, 801 King Leon Way, Sun City Center. I'm a senior citizen, retiree, active volunteer in various community charities, and an avid golfer. Walden Lake in Plant City, Pebble Creek, and now Sandpiper. Ownership blames less golfers, less revenue, higher maintenance costs. Senior golfers in Sun City Center living their Florida dream mourn another recreational loss. Sun City Center was developed as a golfing community, not a country club. When is more development less desirable? When is enough enough? Property owners see redevelopment as a huge upside to profitability. Redistribution of tax responsibility, more houses, mandatory club dues, more perceived values to shareholders. Our Sun City Center citizens fear falling property values, less recreation in open green spaces, trees, less habitat for wildlife, more traffic, more congestion, more stress on basic government provisions of law enforcement, fire response, utility availability. Hundreds of home purchases were influenced by golf course view in exchange for a premium lot fee. The public, your voters, need some fair options to voice opposition to property owners or developers and secure a win-win solution. In the case of Walden Lake, opposition without solutions was a lose-lose outcome. LDC Amendment 220518 language is unclear for existing golf courses between what property changes owners are entitled to and bypassing BOCC oversight without public feedback. I request changes to this amendment to clarify a requirement for public forums to allow feedback on redevelopment of existing golf courses. Our senior community in Sun City Center needs your support to ensure a win-win outcome in exchange for our votes. So let's create great places together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Ooh, who do we have next up? We have, looks like Mr. and Mrs. LeBeau? No? Okay. Mistake. All right. And lastly, I think that was it. Yeah, that's it. All right. So I will close public comment. Oh, sorry. I will turn it over to the commissioners at this point in time for their questions or comments on the item. Oh, wait. Oh, rebuttal. Yeah. Rebuttal.
Well, I might suggest that perhaps Development Services staff clarify the intent of the amendment and the implications for existing golf courses in the Sun City Center area.
In their rebuttal.
Yeah. If Tom doesn't mind doing so.
No, not at all. And I would prefer to call it a response rather than a rebuttal.
All right, there you go.
Yeah. So first and foremost, this amendment will have no effect on existing golf courses as far as redevelopment potential. The vast majority of golf courses in the county are in planned developments, as are most of the golf courses in Sun City Center. Those golf courses are shown on the approved site plans, and for them to be able to redevelop it would actually require a modification of the PD that would be subject to review and approval by the Board of County Commissioners in a public hearing process. So this amendment is making no changes whatsoever to how an existing golf course may be able to redevelop. So let's make that absolutely clear. It is not doing that. Now, with regards to the few golf courses in the county that have residential zoning, standard district residential zoning, and there is one in Sun City Center located on the north side of Sun City Boulevard, and that course is zoned RSC6. As with any property that has a standard zoning district, uses of that property are subject to what's permitted or allowed in the Land Development Code and the development standards for that. So if you have property that's currently occupied by a golf course and zoned RSC6, yes, it does have potential for redevelopment as a subdivision. This amendment is not creating that entitlement. That entitlement is rooted in the Euclidean standard zoning of the property. Now, with regards to the language that was pointed out regarding in the non-conforming use section, this again is not endowing any new entitlement on a golf course. Rather, is staff recommended that we insert that, knowing that if the code were simply to change, that all golf courses would require a planned development zoning district. It then creates a non-conforming use situation for existing golf courses that have standard zoning district. And a non-conforming use situation definitely carries some baggage, particularly even if something as simple as wanting to add a new cart barn. Well, that would actually then require approval by the Board of County Commissioners simply to add a new cart barn to their non-conforming use. And so we wanted to avoid that situation for those golf courses, the 3 or 4 that are out there, and have language that says, okay, they're just going to be deemed a conforming use. But again, that doesn't grant that language is strictly dealing with, let's say, maintenance or redesign of a golf course as a golf course. That language in no way expands or increases redevelopment entitlements that are rooted in the standard zoning of those few golf courses. And that entitlement has always been in place in view of that standard zoning. So again, in most cases, the vast majority of golf courses are located in planned development. The ones that we're familiar with, including ones in Sun City Center, the golf course is shown on the plan as the adopted plan. And if someone wants to redevelop that golf course with a different use, well, then that requires a modification of the PD that is reviewed ultimately by the Board of County Commissioners through a noticed hearing process. Available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'll turn it over to the commissioners. Commissioner Buzza?
Just on that last point, could you reiterate the notification requirements for everyone in the audience as to a PD rezone?
Well, a modification to a PD or a PD rezoning?
To do a PD rezone in this, well, it'll be a brand new PD for the Sun City folks.
Yeah, in both cases, a notification requirement is going to be the same, depending on whether the golf course or the property is located in the urban service area or the rural service area. All property owners within 300 feet or 500 feet, respectively, would be required to receive letters of notice. Yellow signs would be posted by the county, and then homeowners association and neighborhood organizations that are on our registered list would also receive letters of notice. So yeah, there would be ample notice that something was going to change for the golf courses that are zone PD. For the golf courses that have a standard zoning district, and they're going to redevelop in accordance with requirements of the code, then there is no public notice for those situations.
All right, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I understand the intent here, it's really what seems like it's trying to maybe discourage a golf course like that was brought up earlier. I'm not sure if it was from someone in the public or if it was from Mr. Hisney, from being able to be having a golf course converted into housing is going to make it harder. Seems like what this intent, really is. Is that correct?
With regards to new golf courses, yes, sir.
Right. So
it will have no effect on existing golf courses, but the fact that new golf courses would not be able to be developed on standard Euclidean zoning would create a process that is much more difficult for them to redevelop because it would entail then public hearings.
Okay. So I think for the folks like in the audience, I think the concerns that you've had, I think they're actually being heard. We understand, or at least I understand that, and what's being proposed is actually going to protect what you're actually looking for. So if someone just can't go and buy property that's already zoned, that has a residential zoning for, say, 1 unit for 9 units per acre, I make a golf course there, And then, through the market, or I just up and decide one day I want to shut the golf course down, I want to build residential development, I just don't have the right, or that builder just doesn't have the right to go in and do that. So it essentially is going to protect that. So for any new golf courses coming on, they have to be a planned development with their only allowable use to be a golf course. And if it's going to, change over into housing somewhere down the road, then it has to go through the rezoning process. Because I heard of some people mention that they were concerned about not having a public hearing, for that. And that's not going to happen as I read this and I understand, the intent here. So I just want to make sure that the folks in the audience who've took the time to come up here, that you all understood that you're heard and we understand that.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Are there any more questions or comments, discussion of this item from the commissioners? Public comments for the public's already gone by, yeah. We're at the commissioners now. So, any more questions or discussions from the commissioners? All right. With that, then, I will close public comment and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we find LDC Text Amendment 22-0518 consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan and forward this recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
A motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Powell.
I'll second.
Second to that motion by Commissioner Buzza. Is there any more discussion amongst the commissioners? Questions? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to do a roll call vote on this item.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Buzza?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Handy?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you for the information. Thank you all who showed up to give your comments for coming and your time. And we will move on to our next item of business, to the next page. Item 4B, 22-0519, home-based business definition, and the presenter is Carla Llanos.
Carla Llanos with Planning Commission staff. This is a Land Development Code Text Amendment 22-0519. It's for home-based business. This also is a publicly initiated text amendment. And the request is very simple. The current definition in the Land Development Code, it was basically defined as either being agricultural or residential home-based business. What they're doing is they're going to provide a general definition. So they're just striking through the agriculture and the residential reference. And this was kind of initiated or pushed from the state legislature. They made some changes for home-based business, so this is probably a preemption from that. Now, we found it consistent with our comprehensive plan. We looked at future land use objective 9 and 9.2. And at this point, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed text amendment be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners, and we find it consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comp plan. We have Development Services staff there online, so they could probably give a little bit more detail as well.
Yes, commissioners, this is really just a housekeeping effort. Last year, the state legislature passed preemptive regulations for home-based businesses, and we were required to amend our home-based business regulations in the Land Development Code accordingly, which we did. And those new regulations were adopted last year. After that process went through, we saw that we neglected to revise the definition of home-based business in the code at the same time that we amended the regulations. This was staff oversight. This amendment is simply going to revise the definition to align with the new regulations, which no longer make reference, as they did previously, to residential and agricultural categories of home-based business. So again, it's simply a housekeeping effort.
All right, thank you. We had no one from the public sign up for comment on this one, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for questions, discussion of this item. Not seeing any lights at this time. I will then close public comment and open it up to motions from the commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we find Hillsborough County LDC Text Amendment 22-051519 consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the future Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan. Then we pass it along to the County Board of Commissioners for consideration.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Bernstein.
Second.
And a second to that motion by Commissioner Powell. Is there any more discussion of this item from the commissioners at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Buzza?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes?
Powell?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you very much. All right, next item up for business, 4622-0520 Kennels, and the presenter is Jillian Massey.
Hello, Commissioners. This is Jillian Massey with your Planning Commission staff. As mentioned, this is LDC Text Amendment 22-0520, Parking for Kennel Facilities. This is a publicly initiated text amendment. This request seeks to amend one section of the Land Development Code, Section 6.11.52, which is relating to parking and loading standards. The amendment will establish a parking ratio for kennel facilities, as it currently does not specify the minimum required number of spaces for this use. The minimum required parking will be 2 spaces per 1,000 gross square feet. This proposed ratio is in line with parking requirements from nearby jurisdictions. We did a review for consistency with the comprehensive plan and found it to be consistent with future land use element objective 9 and policy 9.2 and community design component objective 18-1 and policies 18-1.1 through 18-1.10, which relates to parking lot configuration and design. Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed Land Development Code text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated Hillsborough County. And we have county staff on the line to discuss this in further detail and answer questions.
Commissioners, yes, this amendment is simply to establish a minimum parking ratio for kennels. The LDC in the past did have one. It dropped out. So we are proposing 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet. We had researched other jurisdictions, and their range went from 1.67 spaces per 1,000 to 4 spaces per 1,000. We think 2 spaces per 1,000 should prove adequate. I believe we also examined some recent approvals for kennels and found that consistent with what's being provided. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. All right, we didn't have anyone sign up for public comment on this one, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for discussions, questions on this item. Yes, Commissioner Bernstein.
Maybe it's more an observation, but I'd certainly invite comment on this. It's a little surprising to me personally that the space requirement is tied to square footage as opposed to some other metric like capacity for animals. It's, I guess, potentially could adversely impact a facility that's chosen to make more space available for fewer animals. But I'm just curious if that space connection, square footage, is the normal metric used in some of the neighboring counties.
Well, in our research, there was a variety of methods. Many of them, though, went by gross floor area. We recommend doing it by gross floor area. because the size of the building isn't going to change, but it is possible after something's adopted or approved, interior modifications would, perhaps affect the required parking. So we find it more effective in our site development review to go by floor area rather than so many spaces per kennel enclosure, so many spaces for staff, so many spaces for facility vehicles, because again, all of that, especially the number of staff, number of facility vehicles, is definitely a variable number over time. Whereas the floor area of the building is not, yeah, unless it comes back through the site development process, and then we can readdress the amount of parking. So that's why we definitely prefer to do it by a floor area ratio. And again, that's found in a number of other jurisdictions as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other? Yes, Commissioner. Fernandez.
Yeah, I guess part of me kind of feels like, part of what we're consistently always doing here is trying to update some of these things because they're a little outdated. And if we're looking around at other counties that may also be a little outdated, does that necessarily make sense? The other side of that is just a practical, logical one. I just got a puppy, and we've been taking her to, one of these locations. And this facility that we take her to is pretty large. They have more than enough ample space for the pets to go in there. And the other day I was there, it was like 7 o'clock at night, and I asked, and I said, how many are there still in there? We're picking her up late. And they said, we have 36 dogs. And I mean, they have enough space in there for those dogs to be there comfortably. They only have like 10 parking spots. I don't know if that is, I've, in real estate, helping my clients find properties to do different types of developments and such, this square foot ratio per space is something that consistently comes up, and trying to make something a viable investment or not an investment. And I mean, this to me kind of stands out like one of those similar type of situations where, at these facilities, it's kind of similar to a childcare facility. They don't, the amount of parking that they have there in comparison to how many children go in the space is their calculation may be the same for the childcare facility. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I just think, you've got larger facilities that have smaller amounts of space for pets. So just thought.
Good comments, Commissioner Cardenas. All right. Yes, Commissioner Handy.
I have just a quick question that's interesting, but are you saying that they don't need that many spaces?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought, because I was thinking the same thing. It's like, well, it's like you were saying, like childcare. I mean, not all 36 dog owners are there at the same time. And it may be, that may be the easiest way to come up with what the required parking should be, but it might not be applicable in all cases. Yeah. So my other question about that is, and I'm not sure, because it doesn't say here in the section or part 6.11, is this just commercial facilities? Like, would this be applicable to like a nonprofit, like a rescue shelter or humane society or something like that? Because they are very likely would not have the resources to, if they expanded, come up with the space to also expand their parking.
Yeah, no, these regs would apply to all kennel facilities. Just to give you an idea of how 2 spaces per 1,000 compares with other common uses, for instance, doctor's offices require 5 spaces per 1,000. General retail uses require 5 spaces per 1,000. So 2 spaces per 1,000 is on the low side. And for instance, the example that the other commissioner gave about where he takes his puppy, 10 spaces, a building 5,000 square foot in size would be required to have 10 spaces. I don't know how large is that particular, and again, let's differentiate between kennels and veterinarians as well. Yeah, so it's definitely on the lower side of the range of parking spaces that are required for other uses. And then also, if there were some substantial reasons for a reduction in that, our code does allow for administrative reviews of alternative parking plans. And also, there's always the option of someone seeking a variance.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Kress?
So I've looked at downtown parking issues, I would say ad nauseum, and I'll talk to you about that later. But there is a strong and growing contingent of people who feels that the market should just decide how much parking they need. And I think to the point that maybe that my commissioners were trying to make is that really is a cost burden, especially if you are talking about like an SPCA or Humane Society or something like that. So I don't know that I'm going to vote against this today, but I hope that we can continue to progress in a way that parking isn't so prescriptive and we have other ways to get around if that referendum passes in November. So I'll get off my soapbox, but just something to think about as we continue to progress with these kinds of things.
Thank you, Commissioner Kress. Were there any, yes, Commissioner
Yeah,
Handy?
just one quick, so I think what I heard was said was that there could be a variance if it was like a nonprofit type situation where they would not be able to conform to this.
Well, a variance would have to meet there's two things. There's an administrative approval for an alternative parking plan, but also, and then there's the variance. The variance is decided on whether the case meets the tests for a variance that are found. There's 6 criteria that you have to meet, or that the LUHO has to say or determine that you meet. Whether you're nonprofit or not, I don't know that that's directly relevant to those tests. But yes, they would, as with any property owner, if they felt they met the test for the variance, then they could apply for that. Yes, ma'am.
So, and then one more question. If there isn't criteria for parking in this kennel code, so then what? The kennels are just not subject to this parking requirement, yeah?
I'm not certain how that's being handled at the present time, but it's certainly a need that needs to be addressed. So I imagine we've muddled through it, but certainly it's much better to have a clear standard for parking.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any more questions or discussion? Yes, Commissioner Cardenas.
My guessing is if this does go through and there's current kennels, they'd be grandfathered in, so they would not need to. This would more so hold back future kennels to open up for the requirement. Is that?
Yeah, if you had a kennel that went through our permitting processes and was approved, yes, they wouldn't fall subject to this.
Would that be the construction of a new one, or if one decided to occupy a new space, and in that space they were going to put in a kennel?
Yeah, if it's a new kennel moving into an existing building, then it would be reviewed against these standards. But if it's an existing commercial building and there's other requirements for kennels besides simply the parking, as I mentioned earlier, a typical parking requirement for a commercial strip center is 5 spaces per 1,000. And in some cases it's higher depending if they've had restaurants and things like that in there. So a kennel coming into an existing strip center with a requirement of 2 spaces per 1,000, very likely there's going to be adequate parking in that center that should have been developed at a minimum of 5 spaces per 1,000.
Yeah, I guess part of the problem is in even the current at the 5 spaces per 1,000. When I've sat down and done performers on projects, we have to walk away from stuff because 5 spaces per 1,000 still isn't enough for investments to be viable. So I guess if
well, let's be clear on that. That's the minimum required parking in the county. In most zoning districts, other than I believe in some community planning districts, you're always allowed to provide more parking than the minimum, rather than, but not the opposite. You cannot provide less parking than minimum, but you can always provide more. So if a kennel felt they needed more than 2 spaces per 1,000 because of their particular market, new customers they're serving, they would certainly be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that minimum still was the minimum was still too high, and it didn't allow us to
You're
get
saying
into
it's too
develop
high.
certain investments. Yes.
All right, I thought you were saying that it was too low.
It was just too high, so it didn't allow us to get into those investments. I guess my other question is there ever an attempt to reach out to current kennels and say, hey, how many parking spots do you have? How does your business flow work based on that? And kind of a more of a practical approach to the situation to see what current kennels need or don't need for their ability to function.
I'll ask Israel as to, I know that I believe we looked at some existing kennels. Israel, if you'd like to answer that question, please.
Sure. Israel Monsanto Development Services. We, for example, to give you a comparable jurisdiction, Manatee County has 2 spaces per 1,000. We reach out to their planning office, their zoning office, and they actually put in contact with the code compliance, and they stated that in the last many years, they have been using that metric. They haven't received any pushback from developers, and not only that, they haven't found like those places to be in code violation. So they felt that the 2.0 per 1,000 fits pretty well in their community, and that's what we reach out for them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Monsanto. Did you?
Yeah,
have
I
more?
guess I'm curious what our density is comparison to a county like Manatee County. Use that as an example towards our county or towards our city. Like, would this? The city of Tampa is inside of is inside of the county, so this would also affect them.
No, this would just apply in unincorporated.
Okay.
All right. Yes, Ms. Horton?
Just a little background from a different county's perspective. We had one space per 300 square feet. But with the kennel, you have people dropping off and picking up just like a daycare center. So they weren't there all the time, and when they did stop, it was for 5 to 10 minutes at the most. So those parking spaces weren't needed very much because there was a transition all the time. So that was one of the issues that we faced with, that we had too many parking spaces at 1 to 300. Because, like I said, they didn't use them very often, and on Saturdays and Sundays, they were hardly used at all.
Thank you. Good comments, Commissioner Orton. Are there any other comments or discussion on this item from the commissioners? Not seeing any lights on at this time. I will then go ahead and close public comment and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Buzza.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, we move that this is consistent with the future of Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan and forward its recommendation to the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners for their review and approval.
Motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Buzza. Is there any second to that motion from the commissioners?
Commissioner Kress, second.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Buzza, a second to that motion by Commissioner Kress. Is there any more discussion or questions from the commissioners on this item? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to do a roll call vote and let the clerk know that Commissioner Fernandez has entered the room.
Thank you. Bernstein?
No.
Buzza?
Yes.
Cardenas?
No.
Fernandez?
No vote.
Thank you. Handy?
No.
Kress?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried. 4 to 3, Commissioners Bernstein, Buzza, and Cardenas. Excuse me. One moment, please.
Take your time.
Okay, motion carried 4-3. Commissioners Buzza, Handy, and Cardenas voted no.
I have Bernstein, Cardenas, and Handy voted no, and Fernandez abstained. Is that right? Okay.
One moment. I have Bernstein, Cardenas, Handy, no. Fernandez abstained. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the information. Moving on to our next item, 4722-0521, Farmworker Housing, and the presenter is Jillian Massey again.
This is Jillian Massey with your Planning Commission staff. As mentioned, this is Land Development Code Text Amendment 22-0521 with relating to farm worker housing, driveway setbacks, and approval renewal. This is a publicly initiated text amendment to the Land Development Code. The request seeks to amend one section of the Land Development Code, section 6.11.39, farm worker housing. Currently, subsection D, site requirements, requires that all development have a 50-foot setback. The proposed text amendment allows for internal driveways to be within that 50-foot setback. The other text amendment is relating to subsection E, which is occupancy. Currently, farm worker housing approvals are for every 2 years and require an affidavit to confirm the intended use. The proposed text amendment requires 3-year maintenance of the health department records provided to the Hillsborough County upon request. This request was reviewed for consistency with the comprehensive plan, and it was found to further the intent of future land use element objective 9 and policy 9.2. Planning Commission staff recommends that the Land Development Code text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated Hillsborough County. And again, we do have county staff on the line to provide some further information and answer questions.
Commissioners, your staff provided a good summary of this amendment, so I'll just be ready for any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. We did not have anyone sign up from the public for public comment on this item, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for their discussion and questions. Yes, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. Why is there a need for an affidavit every 2 years? Like, why?
Yeah, well, that's actually being replaced. That's the current requirement that currently the permit approvals for farm worker housing are valid for 2 years. And then they get renewed by someone submitting or the operator submitting an affidavit every 2 years. And it's to verify that the project is still being utilized by farm workers. And this is because these projects, particularly in the rural areas, are permitted a much higher density than otherwise would be allowed. So you don't want a farm worker housing project turning into just simply rentals to the public at large, so, right. But that's actually being replaced because in discussions with the agricultural industry, it was identified that at times the fact that permit is good for only 2 years has created financing obstacles because the financial institutions are saying, well, you want a loan for however many years, but this permit's only good for 2. So we've suggested, we proposed to replace it with the requirement that the housing operator maintain approved health department permits for migrant housing, and they have to maintain those on a running basis for a period of 3 years, and then make those records available to Hillsborough County upon request. And we think that's going to be a much more efficient and better way of ensuring that these projects serve farm workers as they were intended.
Thank you. I didn't realize there was such a higher density out there, so that makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Handy.
Thank you. Okay, I understand the 2 year is a little bit restrictive, but how will the county maintain compliance? Like, what would be the new mechanism if it's not renewed every 2 years or reapplied?
If the county were to become aware that the farm worker housing is not being utilized by farm workers, then they would have an opportunity to investigate that.
But that's my question, how would the county become aware of,
Well, one way
misuse of
would
that?
be would be from complaints from neighboring residents. There may be other methods as well, but it would probably rely primarily on complaints from residents.
Okay, that doesn't seem quite right to me. It seems like there need for that level of density to be granted in these rural areas. I mean, there is, again, I understand that the 2 year limitation can be restrictive, but it seems a little bit ripe for taking advantage if there's not a better mechanism to oversee it. But I do have a second question about the 50-foot doing away or actually allowing the driveways to be inside the 50-foot buffer. What is the purpose of that change? What brought that about?
Yeah, to provide a little more flexibility in the design of the site. Now, our change to allow the driveways within 50 feet, it only applies to where that area is adjacent to a public roadway or to a property that is under common ownership with the farm worker housing site. So it's not going to allow a driveway any closer to a neighboring property that's under separate ownership than what's required today. It was felt that this would provide a little more flexibility in the design of the farm worker housing sites and allow a little more efficient utilization of the area of the land that's being utilized for the farm worker housing. So we don't see that it poses any adverse impact to neighboring properties because, again, it's restricted to areas that are adjacent to public roadways or properties that are under common ownership with the farm worker housing project.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. It still, to me, I mean, a buffer is a buffer, except that it's not a buffer if you're allowed to put a driveway in it. So it kind of defeats the purpose of a buffer to me. And I'm picturing some of the rural roadways out there in unincorporated Hillsborough County where this may apply. And there's a lot of public roads out there, but they're really low density and like large acre residential, for example, and to me that defeats the purpose of a buffer. And those country roads maybe need those buffers just to keep it with that rural character. So I'm a little uncomfortable with that. But thank you for the explanation.
Yes, Commissioner Cardenas.
So in a previous life, I've been on these farm worker housing sites, and they're not pretty. If anything, it's pretty sad what some of them look like. I guess my question is, I've read through this several times, but I'm trying to decipher it. Are we, with the requirement in reference to health department records, are we becoming more restrictive or less restrictive generally?
Those kind of permits have always been required for farm worker housing. So it's really not any more restrictive. It just provides a different mechanism for monitoring the continued use of the farm worker housing project for farm workers.
It's gone from them having to provide an affidavit to now just having to maintain the records?
Well, the affidavits, they simply had to submit an affidavit, and there was no verification on our end. We accepted it as face value because that's what the code said, right? submit an affidavit. Now, I'm certain that, those affidavits were truthful in every way. We just feel that it's a much better enforcement mechanism or monitoring mechanism to, again, have the farm worker housing operator maintain records of the permits for an ongoing 3-year period and submit them. We think it's just simply a better way of monitoring the use than the current situation.
Got it.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Buzzer.
I would just like to thank the process for including this. This has been an issue with myself in East Hillsborough with a fair number of farm clients, that the 2-year permitting period for the H2A housing in particular was not necessarily a roadblock, but it certainly was a speed bump for not only bank financing, but there are farmer investment groups now that are looking at these. Actually, the process is accelerating to much nicer housing, and it's certainly not Ritz-Carlton, but to Commissioner Cardenas' point, there is some rough stock in that inventory, and I think that's been whittled down. So just wanted to thank the process for including that. That will help for future financing and, again, for additional investment in that sector. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buzza. Are there any more comments or discussion from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time. I'll go on ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This time I would move that we fund Hillsborough County LDC text amendment number 22-0521 consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the future Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan, that we pass it along to the County Board of Commissioners for their consideration.
Second.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Bernstein and a second to that motion by Commissioner Buzza. Is there any more discussion of this item among the commissioners? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to go ahead and do a roll call vote on this item.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Buzza?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Fernandez?
Yes.
Handy?
No.
Kress?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-1. Commissioner Handy voted no.
Thank you. All right. Our next item up for business is 4C8, Lithia South County Overlay District Design Standards. Oh, I skipped one, sorry. No, that's right, yeah. And the presenter is Salma Ahmad.
Good afternoon. This is Salma Ahmad with Planning Commission staff, and this is Land Development Code Text Amendment 220783, the Lithia Southeast County Overlay District. Next slide. This is a publicly initiated amendment. Next slide. The proposed amendment seeks to introduce a new overlay district, Part 3.25.00, also known as the Lithia Southeast County Overlay District, to integrate non-residential development with the surrounding rural character of the area. Applicants will be given general design standards and building styles that draw upon architectural styles that are identified as Greek Revival, Italianate, Neoclassical, General Store, Barn, and Florida Vernacular. Next slide. There will be a threshold in the Land Development Code where these design requirements are triggered, as well as exemptions for certain uses. The overlay district will apply to rezonings that are planned developments or major modifications to planned developments. The LSC overlay district will also outline design requirements for fencing, buffering, screening, landscaping, natural resources, signage, parking, and architectural features. Next slide. We reviewed the text amendment for consistency with the comprehensive plan and found that in addition to furthering the intent of Objective 9 and Policy 9.2 of the future land use element, the request was also consistent with the community design component policies and the future land use element regarding rural design and character, specifically Goal 14 and its respective objectives and policies. We also found that the proposed amendment furthers the intent of the cultural historic objective of the South Shore Area-Wide Systems Community Plan of the livable element that recognizes the rural heritage of its community. Next slide. And at this time, Planning Commission staff recommend that the proposed Land Development Code Text Amendment 220783 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the future Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated County. And county staff is available for further detail and to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. No one signed up for public comment from the public on this one, so we will turn it over to the planning commissioners. Discussions, questions on this item? Yes, Commissioner Buzza.
What was the impetus for this overlay? Just curious where this started or originated.
Hi, I believe Development Services would have a little bit more background on that. I believe it was initiated by the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, I'm going to have Israel Monsanto answer your questions on this amendment. He's been much more heavily involved in it. So, Israel?
Good afternoon, Israel Monsanto, Development Services. To answer your question, yes, this was directed by the Board of County Commissioners to create this special overlay on the LEC, or the Lithia South County Overlay District.
And this is all the way to the, from Fishhawk all the way to Polk County line.
Right, so, correct. So the area subject to this overlay is located from the southeastern boundary of the Fishhawk community, running east to the Polk County line, then south to the Manatee County line.
That's a huge area for an overlay of this type. Is there any other overlays that are of comparable scale in Hillsborough County currently?
Well, we do have the Lutz Rural, which is a large area as well, and the Northwest, which is the Keystone Odessa, which is also has an overlay on that, which is almost the northwest corner of our county.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I apologize. There's some noise out there, and I mean, maybe my hearing's not as great as it should be.
Sure. So we do have two other overlays or special areas. The Northwest County, one is the Keystone Odessa area, which is it's all the rural area in the Northwest County, and also the Lutz Rural also occupies portion of the Northwest and also portion of the north of the county. So they're also large areas in the county. This is larger, but those two are also large areas in the county that are subject to special requirements.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I ask that is that, I mean, if you spend any time out there, it's God's country. There's nothing out there, and the thought of what I would consider something like next door to Fishhawk would be appropriate. Maybe not be perfectly the same thing in Fort Lonesome. There'd be some restrictions there that could hurt non-corporate development, let's put it that way. So that would be my concern with this overlay being that large and going all the way to the Polk County line and the Manatee County line, encompassing those areas that could develop on their own a little bit, but a Lennar type person or company would be more apt to follow these guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buzza. Yeah, I was interested in this, being that it originated from the Board of County Commissioners, how much public comment has gone into this? Like how many, workshops did you have down there in the community, and what the community feedback was on these overlay design standards?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many, there has been some meetings and with one of the commissioners down there in the South County with residents. We will have a public hearing, first public hearing on May 19th. And that will be the first official public hearing that we'll have for this text amendment.
So beyond this public meeting, that will be the only other public meeting that people who live down there will have the opportunity to speak on this?
As well as a second public hearing, which is June 9th.
And we only had one meeting prior to this down in the community with a commissioner.
I'm not sure how many meetings, to be honest with you.
So we're not even sure of the one meeting that we had. So we might have had no meetings with the community, and this just came down from the BOCC.
Well, at least from county staff, don't recall having public meetings, but there have been public meetings in the South County, or communications with the residents in the South County.
Okay. Well, what has been the what has been the extent of the communication? Like how many times have you communicated with the community down there about what's going on with this overlay? I'm just trying to understand like how much dialogue there's been with the community, and I don't understand why it's such a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the exact number of those meetings. Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments or discussions from the commissioners on this overlay? Yes, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I can understand why Commissioner Buzza, brought up the fact of how much, land this is going to, encompass. To me, I think about some of the different, like community plans, that we have, in South County, and this to me seems to want to preserve some of the heritage, in the style of some of the older, classical, designs. So, from that, standpoint, I think what I see here and what I've read, looks really great. But I didn't see, for my question, this only applies to certain size of properties, though, correct? I mean, like, it has to have like a certain amount of acreage. Like, if you're above or below like a certain threshold, this won't apply to you. So for like larger estates, but not smaller estates.
So commissioners, the applicability is for new non-residential development. And that would but that will accept agricultural uses, public schools, and places of worship, mining, and there is a threshold for existing development that would come back to redevelop or renovate 50% of the value of those renovations. Everything over the 50% of the value of the renovation will then trigger the applicability of these requirements.
So if I own, say, 10 acres out there and I have horses and I decide, because my daughter wants to redo the front, that I would now have to comply with these new, standards? Is that, with these new design standards?
Right, agricultural uses are exempt.
Okay. But if I wasn't farming, I'd take out the horses, all right, they all died. So if they didn't, if they weren't, then I would have to, someone would have to adhere to these design standards if we were remodeling.
Right, if it is a non-residential, that would fall under the applicability, yes.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Buzza.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to kind of float over, brought up the Keystone Odessa groups, but they have been, were very involved in their overlay plans. Obviously, this is directed by the county commission and not staff, and I appreciate your position on this. I think this is a control issue that I don't feel comfortable with. It's too much of a area of our county that's going to be put under this overlay, so I'll be voting no on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Buzza. Commissioner Handy, let me.
I was cracking up over Commissioner Buzza saying, what was it? Nothing's out there, or it's no man's land. I'm like, well, I'm out there. I think this area does need something to regulate what could happen, and I think it's a very proactive way to do so. I mean, some of these designs that are shown in here are a little over the top. I don't think we're going to put Greek Revival out there, but I think that the area is ripe for just cheap strip malls thrown up and stuff that will just not adhere to the rural character and just not, and the facilities or even the private properties that are out there now will end up suffering if it is not somehow done properly. So I like this proactive approach, and I think it's actually going to go, it will be beneficial in protecting those areas from just out of hand cheap development taking advantage of, what's left of the rural area.
Thank you, Commissioner Handy. Yes, Commissioner Powell.
I'm curious if this is something that we have to vote on, today. Since it's such a large undertaking, is this something that maybe, we can wait till we can hear some of, public feedback that happens, or maybe we can do a workshop to better dive into all the nuances here? Can we request that?
I believe based on the timing of the public hearings, and Mr. Monsanto can correct me if I'm wrong, but your next meeting would be after the, because it's June 13th. I think that would be after the two public hearings. Is that correct, Israel?
That is correct.
Okay.
That will be after the second public hearing.
Right, so if you want to weigh in on this, this is the time to do so. Keep in mind that in addition to your consistency finding, you can also, direct that a letter be written, perhaps indicating that you think there should be additional public input in the process, something to that effect. But I would not want you to delay a vote on this and miss your opportunity to weigh in.
So I agree with Commissioner Handy on, having some regulations for development, out there specifically since we don't have too much more rural land. But since it's so detailed, I think that if I've heard from some other commissioners, I just don't know if everyone is quite, comfortable, because maybe we just don't fully understand it and haven't really had a chance to dive into it. So I wouldn't be opposed to a workshop or something like that, but, if we need to take action now, we take action now. It's fine by me.
Yeah, it sounds like we don't really have the luxury to do that, because the community didn't quite have the luxury, which gives me some pause and concern on this item. I guess I'm a bit spoiled being Planning Commission baby. Usually we have extensive public involvement when we start to do things like this. I remember when we redid the community plans, we must have done 1 million workshops down in the communities. So it seems strange to me and gives me a bit of pause. But Commissioner Handy, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow up, I would also, I'm out in that area. Fort Lonesome is my backyard, and I'd be curious to have a little bit more background on this as well. And I'd love to hear public comment if we had any or could get any. However, having said that, good luck getting public involvement out there. I mean, it just doesn't happen. And it probably, if it did, it probably would not be fully representative. So, yeah, that's all.
That's true. Thank you, Commissioner Handy. And I did want to say also, besides all this pause that I'm taking, I do think that regulating that area needs to happen in some shape or form, just like Commissioner Handy said. You don't want people getting in there and running wild, but I've also seen it go the other way. You put the wrong regulations in place, like Commissioner Buzza spoke to. I've worked with a lot of these builders, and I've written guidelines like what I see before me, and I know they can work in those things. Cheap developers, all day long, they can build strip malls using that document right there. I know it for a fact. So I've written that document there before, for a fact. So you might want to be careful. That's the only thing. But I do think, like you said, it does need to be regulated to protect, what we do have in that area of the community. Get off my soapbox now. Is there any more comments or discussion from the commissioners on this item? All right, not seeing any lights before us right now. I will then close public comment and open it up to motions on this item from the commissioners. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we find LDC text amendment 22-0783, consistent with the future of Hillsborough comprehensive plan, and forward this recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
Second.
All right, we have a consistency finding by Commissioner Powell, a second to that motion by Commissioner Handy. Is there any more discussion from the commissioners? Seeing none at this time, I will ask the clerk to do a roll call vote on this item.
Bernstein,
Abstain?
Buzza,
No.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Fernandez,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes?
Powell,
Yes.
Joseph,
No.
motion carried 5-2. Commissioners Buzza and Joseph voted no. Commissioner Bernstein abstained.
Thank you very much. All right, on to our next item of business, and it is no more action. Sweet. Briefings and presentations. And our first presentation is 5A HCCPA 22-01 Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment for Commercial Locational Criteria. And the presenter is Melissa Leinhardt.
Need to turn on your microphone.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Melissa Leinhardt. I'm the Planning Commission Staff Liaison to Unincorporated Hillsborough County, and I'm also the co-manager of the Commercial Locational Criteria Study, along with Andrea Papandrew, who is just here and helped me navigate that technical difficulty. So she's here with me today as well. And the purpose of the meeting today is to provide you all with a brief update of how the Planning Commission, how the Locational Criteria Study is progressing. So the Commercial Locational Criteria, or CLC, as I'm going to say it for the rest of the day, so we're not here extra long, is currently found within the future land use element under Objective 22. And as part of this update, the Planning Commission has tasked our consultant, SNME, with revising these provisions to ensure that residents can meet their daily needs for goods and services within a reasonable distance within their neighborhood, near their neighborhood, and then that commercial activities are integrated seamlessly into nearby residential neighborhoods, and also that new commercial which services the nearby neighborhoods does not require a comprehensive plan amendment. And then just real quick, we've gotten some questions about defining daily needs. So I wanted to just tell you for the purposes of this study, daily needs have generally included fresh foods, professional services, healthcare, and eateries. And then another question that we've gotten in our outreach is how are we defining neighborhood serving uses? And those are uses that are scaled in a size and a manner which are intended to service nearby neighborhoods. So a good example is a CVS, which may service just one or two neighborhoods versus a Walmart superstore, which would service multiple neighborhoods or even perhaps entire communities. Planning Commission staff and our consultant, SNME, have implemented an extensive online and in-person public engagement strategy for this effort. Generally, this program can be summarized into one of two categories, either the methods on the blue side of the slide or meetings on the green side. Examples of some of the methods that we've taken for outreach include an interactive project website, which included a survey and a community comment wall. We also, as Plan Hillsborough, reached out through social media posts. We advertised through our Plan Hillsborough newsletter and provided information in there. And then we also had a first-time occasion. We partnered with Hillsborough County Communications, and we are part of the 5 for Friday email that many of you probably get. The green side, or the right side of the screen, that describes the many meetings that we've had with regard to this outreach effort. So we had individual interviews with the Board of County Commissioners. Many of you were there in the fall when we did our group interview with the Planning Commission. We have so far had 2 community meetings, one that was virtual and one that was a hybrid of virtual and in-person. And then we have a 3rd community meeting that's scheduled for June 2nd. We've had several meetings with county staff, including the Development Services Department, including their Transportation Division, as well as the Community and Infrastructure Planning Department with the county. And then separate from all of that, we've also had 3 stakeholder interviews, including those organizations that are listed on the slide. And then you can review the results of the public engagement program on our project website. There is a memo called Public Engagement Summary, so you can take a look at that if you need some late reading after this meeting. And when we met with the Planning Commission last November, our primary objectives were to introduce the project and then to solicit some feedback regarding the scale of permitted uses that are allowed, how and where commercial uses should be located, the importance of accessibility and connectivity, and then how the CLC should speak to the provisions, the other provisions of the comprehensive plan, most notably the contents of the community plans, of which there are 22. So although we received a lot of really great feedback at that briefing, the following items were the primary recommendations for this effort. And those are listed on this slide here. I'll just go over those really quickly. Just having uses that are permitted by the CLC, making sure they're scaled appropriately and match the character of the surrounding area, and that commercial uses should be clustered, preferably at intersections, that connections to neighborhoods need to be appropriately shaded, well-maintained, and accessible, and that the CLC should not supersede the provisions of the community plans. And then to address feedback regarding scaling, clustering, connectivity, and respecting the existing community plans, we've proposed the following changes to the contents of the CLC. So the first major revision is to limit the types of uses that are eligible for the CLC to neighborhood serving uses, and auto-oriented uses would not qualify. And the way that we've talked about those in our various community meetings and other meetings are uses like gas stations, auto repair shops, and those uses that attract individuals that are arriving by motor vehicle, such as drive-through restaurants. Another change was to limit the scale of the individual establishments to 20,000 square feet, and up to 50,000 square feet would be allowed for neighborhood grocery stores. And the proposed developments exceeding those requirements would be expected to pursue an amendment to the future land use map. And then one of the aspects of the CLC that we spent a lot of time examining in this process was the current waiver process that we have for commercial locational criteria. Today, Planning Commission staff receives a significant number of waiver requests from the development community. And that was a clear sign to us that this objective and its associated policies really need to be revisited and amended. So currently, the language allows for waivers to location and distance requirements, so distance from the intersection, and the waivers to square footage are expressly prohibited. And some waivers we've noticed have been requested because the map that we currently use that's part of the adopted language is a rather outdated map. It's the 2040 cost affordable plan. So, or affordable map, I should say, and then the proposed language would allow waivers to the minimum separation requirements between nodes and building placement, but it would prohibit waivers to uses, so anything beyond the neighborhood serving, square footage requirements and distance requirements. And instead of using this outdated 2040 cost affordable map, we would move on to something that is more relevant, and that would be the Hillsborough County context classification map and the FDOT context classification map. And that would help us determine the appropriateness of the location and focus these uses at intersections. And then finally, we wanted to ensure that new development projects permitted by the CLC would be designed in a manner that not only make them compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, but also result in a good urban form where it's appropriate. So we also wanted to make sure that these new developments connected to existing neighborhoods where possible. So taking the form of pedestrian paths or maybe a stub out to an existing neighborhood. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that the provisions of the CLC were speaking to the county's existing community plans, as I mentioned. So we added a policy stating that new rezoning applications must consider if the request is consistent with the community plans contained within the livable communities element of the comprehensive plan. And this is our proposed timeline. So of course, we're here in May with the Planning Commission workshop. And then in 2 days, on Wednesday, the 11th, we will have the briefing with the Board of County Commissioners. And then we will have that community meeting that I mentioned, our third one, on June 2nd. Our draft 4 is scheduled to be submitted toward the end of June. And then public hearings scheduled in August at the Planning Commission and at the Board of County Commissioners, and that would be on August 8th and 11th respectively, and then a scheduled adoption hearing at the Board of County Commissioners in October. And then with that, we would strongly encourage everyone to visit the project website, as well as the county CLC study page, which both are listed here. And if you're fancy and can scan the little code, you're more than welcome to. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And then I also know that we have our consultant, Pat Tajewski, is also here online. So if there's any methodology questions or things like that, she would probably be best to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments, discussions from the commissioners on this item? Yes, Commissioner Kress.
Thank you. This is interesting, thank you. My question, well, I guess I appreciate the de-emphasis on the auto-oriented uses, neighborhood uses, and you said accessibility, so I wondered, like, how far can you go with this? Can you look at kind of walk, bike, transit access, and if that's missing, that could somehow maybe go up on a priority list? Can you look at the siting of the building so it's not set way back behind a sea of parking and the doors open on the sidewalk side, that sort of thing?
Yes, we do have in the current draft, which is the third draft that's on our website right now, that you can see if you go on the website or on this, check one of these links. The building placement is a requirement. So moving the building close up to the street, parking behind, reverse frontage. And then we also have language in there about meeting connectivity. And again, these waivers would not be, there is a building placement waiver because we felt like, with just Hillsborough County being so big and not knowing the site constraints, if there's, a wetland or something, or if that's where a stormwater pond needs to be, giving us a little bit of flexibility as staff to talk through those items with an applicant to try to see if they can design a site to meet that as best as possible. But there are urban form principles that are built into the new language that are actually going to be in the comprehensive plan, so we will manage that process.
That's great. And then just last thing, I believe the city of St. Petersburg was able to figure out some ways through their code to actually encourage locally owned businesses as opposed to all the chains. So just might be something that we might be able to emulate and steal some good ideas from.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good comments, Commissioner Kress. Are there any other comments or discussions from the commissioners? Seeing none at this time, we'll thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we will pause right here because I think I saw Commissioner Dick slide in the room. So we will pause for just a moment and do a plaque and award presentation for former Commissioner Dix here. Try and get you in between everybody and get you out of here, sir. All right, Powell said we should have made you wait. All right, so we're awarding you this plaque here for your service to the Planning Commission, and it says Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission presented to City appointee John Dix, 2017 through 2021, in recognition of 4 years of exemplary service on the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission. Congratulations.
Exemplary. You copied it exactly as I said that, so thank you. I have to say something, and delighted to do so. It is great seeing all of y'all again. I know we got a couple of new people over here, but this is a talented, fun group. And, you know, I know you're going to have a great time with them and do a lot for the community. It was, as you mentioned, just a second there, Mr. Chairman, it was 2017. My goodness, that seems like an eternity ago, right? And all the things we went through with mask and no mask and meeting virtually and me, you know, having to call in sometimes and all that kind of stuff. We've been through a lot. And I was thinking about how when 2017 rolled around, Melissa, you came out to Plant City and you brought a stack of books and papers about this big, about 3 feet, and you said, this is the agenda for next Monday. And I said, this is fun. And to help me out with that, you gave me this beautiful bag, and I appreciated that. And it was within, I guess, right after that meeting, like just a week later, that Lionel very smartly put all the agenda on a PDF, right? So we could see it on our iPad. So the iPad kind of fit in here pretty good. That was good planning. But I brought it this evening to pass on to my successor over here, Matt Buzza. I have known Matt and his family for years and years, and I will tell you, they are good people. So I was so pleased when my colleagues and my friends on the Plant City Commission appointed you to come back and serve. So you're going on 8, 9, 10, 15, 30 years now. And yeah, no, it's great. So I'm going to give you this, and you do with it whatever needs to be done. But let me just tell you, seriously, people do ask me, they said, did you enjoy your time on there? And I want you to know that I have been blessed and fortunate over my life to serve on many, many, many councils, commissions, boards, and serve my hometown as mayor. And I will tell you that serving with you folks has been one of the most delightful and pleasurable and rewarding opportunities. Because I will tell you, everybody in this room, you know, as a commissioner, you really put your all into it. It takes so much time and effort and a commitment if you want to do it right, and everybody did. And I admire that and I respect that. And we didn't always have 100% votes. You know, sometimes it was right down the middle and one person on the other side, that kind of thing. But there was still a lot of respect that was shown to each other. And that kind of respect is what builds and makes for a stronger commission going forward. So I thank you for that and for the years you let me kind of participate and be involved. And I wish you the best. If I can ever help, obviously that's what I want to do. But at the same time, I encourage you, be bold, you know. Look at the future and look at what you can do for this county. And remember to think not just for, well, what's it going to do for, you know, my family and whatnot like that. Think about the next generation and the next generation. And I know you do, but I'm just kind of saying it because I was thinking about my 3 granddaughters while I was driving over here. The oldest is 6, and then a 4 and a 2. And I was just hoping that, you know, as kids grow up, you want them to stay home. You want them to stay close to you. So let's work really, really hard to always make Hillsborough County a place where, you know, it's not just where you happen to live, but it's where those 3 little girls in the future will choose to live. And that way they can be here to take care of their granddaddy in old age. Thank you so much, and thank you for this, and thanks for the interruption to let me do that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Dix. All right.
Stay for dinner.
All right, our next item of business we have up, I'll go ahead and introduce so I can run out of here and get a picture with Commissioner Dix in between, is HCCPA 22-08 Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, and it is the housing section. Presenters are Marian Abramson, and she will introduce everybody else, I guess.
I'm sorry. All right. Hello, Planning Commissioners. Marianne Abrahamson. I'm here with Alvaro Gabalden, Planning Commission staff, and we're here to present an update to the housing section of the Unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. So as you can see it with the graphic on your right here, this is where we are in the overall update of the comprehensive plan. So the puzzle pieces that are fully shaded in are the chapters that have been fully adopted, so natural open space and one water. And the puzzle pieces that are shaded are the ones that are in progress. So governance and community and built environment which is the chapter that the housing section lives under. So through our work with, or on this housing section, we've been working with members of Plan Hillsborough staff, as well as Hillsborough County staff members from the departments that you see listed here. So some key updates to the housing section, as we've tried to focus on streamlining the goals and objectives, linking housing and transportation, focusing on equal access and supply, and we've revised the affordable housing density bonus. So we are proposing one goal, one all-encompassing goal for the housing section, and that is to ensure fair and equal access to housing for all people in Hillsborough County while accounting for population growth, climate change, and affordability. And from that goal, we've teased out various topics that we have organized into objectives. So the first one is a supply, support a range of affordable housing stock. The next is development incentives. Then we get into the density bonus, finance strategies, transportation infrastructure, equal access, and sustainable housing. So our first objective, supply, reads, support a range of affordable housing stock to meet current and projected housing needs. So the policies that are listed under the supply objective focus on people. We have proposed policies to support education programs and other services that increase understanding and access to housing. And also to best increase the supply, we need to also focus on partnerships. So we're proposing policies that encourage collaboration across jurisdictions and various departments, developers, residents, and other industry stakeholders. And the supply that we provide, we'd like that to be diverse, to make sure that the most amount of people are served in the county and that we produce a variety of housing types. Our second objective is development incentives. So that reads, prioritize the provision of affordable housing and implement development incentives that increase affordable housing opportunities. And the policies that are listed under development incentives focus on administrative aspect, so reviewing regulatory processes to make sure the applicant does not incur excessive additional costs or delays, and various developmental tools as well, or development tools rather, including density bonuses, flexible building envelopes, and other tools to increase housing production. And our third objective is the affordable housing density bonus. So many of you may recall that we've worked with a consultant to update this density bonus, and I'll get into some of those recommendations coming up, but the objective for this reads that density bonuses will be utilized as an incentive to encourage the development of more affordable housing. And through this study, we focused on linking housing and transportation, as well as providing a range of affordability within the density bonus. So some of the policy recommendations that came out of this study was that we have removed the criteria for significant economic development project proximity. Essentially that there was a criteria that listed that these developments, affordable housing density bonus developments, needed to be located within 3 miles of an employment center that had approximately 200 jobs. And we felt that with a changing market, this made sense to remove that criteria. However, the process and criteria are now the same no matter the size of the project. It must be wholly within the urban service area, and an existing plan development may now be amended by a minor modification rather than a major modification to include an affordable housing density bonus. So the base bonus structure is unchanged with the exception of the SMU 6 category. However, we've now proposed additional bonuses in proximity based on proximity to a bus emphasis corridor. After this presentation, you'll hear a presentation on bus emphasis corridors, so you'll get more information on that at that time. So there's a minimum 20% of a proposed development shall be affordable. That's unchanged. However, the maximum area median income has increased from 80% to 120% when using an affordable housing density bonus. And we're also proposing minimum set-asides now for less than 60% AMI and less than 80% AMI. So here's some feedback that we've seen reoccurring through our conversations with industry professionals as well as the consultants' conversations, that these items here directly impact the delivery of affordable housing. And those things are impact fees, administrative approvals, application review and inspection timelines, and parking requirements. So these are things that we continue to work with county staff on. The policies that you have in your packet are a draft, so you'll continue to see revisions to this as they become available, but we welcome your feedback on this as well. And Alvaro will take it away with Objective 4.
Hi there, Alvaro Gabaldon with Planning Commission. So yeah, just to continue with the proposed objectives. Objective 1.4 is support a range of housing finance strategies to help ensure the supply of affordable housing is consistent with demand. A major theme in this group of policies is reviewing administrative barriers to the supply, and that can be evaluated or implemented via financial tools. So a lot of this is like guaranteeing like local bank loans and things like that contribute to, again, those financial incentives and supply of housing. Objective 1.5 is strategically locate affordable housing in conjunction with supportive transportation infrastructure. So a major theme here is interdepartmental coordination. This is another place you'll see bus emphasis corridor listed. And as Marianne mentioned, a presentation specifically about BEC is forthcoming. But these policies, again, they acknowledge the significant cost savings that could potentially be experienced by locating more density around transit connection, and the other benefits to households that concentrating growth, specifically along corridors like a BEC, could realize. Objective 1.6 is promote, facilitate, and provide housing opportunities to serve persons with a physical or developmental disability, people experiencing homelessness, those with intensive medical needs, the older population, migrant farm workers, and other groups protected by Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act of 1968, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So this is kind of self-explanatory, but major themes in this objective include equality. So the policies support housing development for a range of residents across all abilities, and it prohibits discrimination of individuals with special housing needs. So you'll see policies in regards to practices like housing screening that sort of disproportionately impact certain parts of our population, and stability policies, which speak to situations like aging in place and providing for stable housing situations for all sorts of people in our county. And Objective 1.7 pertains to sustainable and innovative housing, and that reads, promote safe and sustainable housing that is adaptable to changing demographic and environmental conditions. Major theme here, again, is being in the environment, and I would say the word like resiliency. So policies consider the relationship between housing, environmental health, and physical well-being. So policies in this section you'll see speak to things like innovative materials or processes that may help us realize significant cost savings and faster paced construction of housing, and by providing like healthier housing, essentially housing that's more resilient to environmental change or to unpredictable energy costs, things like that. So this is our housing section project page. If you visit this link, you'll be able to find our current draft language of the policies and a timeline of our public engagement and forthcoming meetings about the draft. And so it's on Plan Hillsborough /housing section, and I'll pass it back to Marianne.
All right, great. Thank you. So we have our workshop with the BOCC this Wednesday. We'll be providing a similar presentation and hopefully getting some good feedback from the board. And then we're going into public engagement in the summer with an anticipated transmittal hearing in August and an adoption hearing in October. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Did any of the commissioners have any comments or questions, any discussion for this item? Nope. I noted one thing and a message I wanted to convey to the consultant. You guys were talking about the half-mile distance to the BEC. I was wondering whether that was like a half-mile radius, whether that was a half-mile by route. You got to be careful with those distances and use them to our advantage, because people like me and Commissioner Fernandez can make a half-mile look a bunch of different ways. So just keep that in mind as we go forward.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a part of the discussion that we had. You know, is it a bird's eye? Is it a, you know, walkable half mile? So those things are still getting ironed out. So
Good deal. All right, Commissioner Kress.
Thank you. I wondered if, when you're talking about the parking requirements, if they might be scaled back based on how close you are to the bus emphasis corridor, for instance, or those kinds of strategies being considered?
that's been a part of the conversation as well. So that's something that we are exploring through the bus emphasis corridor work, as well as you know, other work that's ongoing at the moment. So through conversations with county staff and the consultant, we've discussed, you know, is it appropriate to reduce parking for every affordable housing development, or should we maybe focus more on where that affordable housing development is located, so that people who live in affordable housing development still has, you know, access to transit, won't be negatively affected by, you know, reduced parking if they don't live on a transit line, for example. So these are conversations that still need to occur. And I see, Melissa, you probably have some. Oh, okay, no, okay. So yeah, so these conversations are again ongoing, but it's good to hear that, you know, if you have any specific comments on the parking ratio for this, we would welcome those.
Great, and then if I may, I just lost my train of thought, sorry. Well, I'll think of it. Oh, I know what it was, and maybe this isn't the right spot for it, but you also talked about access, I think, and, you know, is there a way to encourage this development on a grid and not a bunch of cul-de-sacs, maybe behind a gate even? So, you know, we've all seen the maps, right, of the big developments, and you have to actually drive out and go away around to reach your neighbor on the other side, so.
Yeah, that's a great comment. So we have policies that state that the affordable housing developments need to have access to a public street. And so then there was conversation, well, what does that mean? Does it mean it can't not be behind a gate? Because typically gated communities are private, you know, private streets. And what does access mean? You know, can they still, so that's a great comment that we can definitely take back, you know, to our working group too, and flesh out a little bit more. I certainly think that's worth defining a little bit, being a little bit more specific on whether, you know, gating or cul-de-sacs, if that's a really, you know, appropriate location for affordable housing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All good conversation. Any more questions or discussions from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time. We'll thank you for the information and move on to our next item.
Thank you.
5C, HCCPA 22-11 Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Bus Emphasis Corridors.
Right, good afternoon, Commissioners. Trying to get this down to my height level.
Let me introduce you. The staff is Katrina Corcoran and Elizabeth Watkins. I forgot to do that, sorry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Katrina Corcoran, Planning Commission staff, here with my co-lead, Elizabeth Watkins, TPO staff, and we're here today to talk to you about the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, HCCPA 2211. This is on the Bus Emphasis Corridors, or BEC, text amendment. This is publicly initiated, and it is proposed to be a part of the future land use element. And these policy discussions came about amongst elected officials and county staff, just talking about that intersection with mobility, land use, and housing, and how we can really flush that out with policy language. So the purpose of the BECs is to expand housing opportunity, improve walkability, and create more transit-supportive places. And how we're doing that is by looking at corridors with existing bus service and potential for redevelopment. And there are a number of benefits to the county by looking at these bus emphasis corridor policies, including increasing affordability and diversity of housing types, increasing access to opportunity, including jobs, services, and educational opportunities for residents, advancing smart growth goals that are already within the county's comprehensive plan, so focusing growth inward, redevelopment, and infill, creating sustainable and resilient places, so making sure that we're shifting away from single occupancy vehicles, more towards bus emphasis, and making sure that we have those compact, walkable building types. and also improving health outcomes and travel safety. So ensuring that these places support that shift towards bus and having a low-stress traffic environment. And here you can see the spectrum of different types of corridors. So on the far left-hand side, you'll see transit-oriented places, that being the most dense and urban development. That's fixed guideway transit, 10 to 15-minute headways. What we're talking about here is bus emphasis corridors, so kind of a step away from that, but still walkable and transit-supportive development. We'll focus on enhanced local bus service, so 15 to 30-minute headways. On the far right, you can see compact walkable centers and connected corridors, and those are more typical suburban development patterns that you already see today, and those are addressed by the commercial locational criteria update. Again, focusing on that spectrum there with the TOD, bus emphasis, and the different types of centers and corridors. This slide shows you how bus emphasis corridors will focus on the form of development, including development intensity, building orientation and setback, typical building height, of course, preferred transit type, and parking, so parking location and potential how much parking. So the big question is, where are these bus emphasis corridors located? So I'd like to emphasize that this is a draft map, a first draft. And as you can see here, we have existing corridors in the dark green. So that's bus service today, at least every 30 minutes. Emerging corridors are in the light green. So that's bus service today, at least every 60 minutes. I'd also like to note that those red parcels you see there are places that we've looked at for redevelopment potential. And again, this is a first draft, and it will be refined in the plan amendment process with county staff as well as HART. So there's a number of policies here. The bus emphasis corridors policies will address development, including land use mix, development intensity, street network and block structure, building form and frontage, again, parking location and requirements, as I previously mentioned, streetscapes and public spaces, and multimodal facilities. And finally, as you already heard from Marion and Alvaro, this will tie into the affordable housing density bonus. So having a higher incentive for affordable housing that are located on bus emphasis corridors. And again, looking at that reduced parking requirement in affordable housing areas. And with that, I will turn this over to my co-lead, Elizabeth Watkins.
Thanks, Katrina. Some other policies from a road infrastructure perspective include prioritizing walk, bike, and bus multimodal levels of service. While the change in the infrastructure will be gradual because those levels of service are mostly for a planning perspective, we expect that to show up in infrastructure and design gradually. Additionally, we are working closely with the county on other areas where the BECs could cross over for other county policies. What's great about having this network of BECs is it gives it a place to start this prioritized framework where it could be overlaid with a complete streets guidelines or speed limit policy where you can dive deeper into this, again, this prioritized network. As Katrina mentioned earlier, HART is a core partner in this, and that commitment to providing service to these core routes is essential to the implementation of BECs. So it's envisioned that that commitment will be institutionalized within the Transit Development Plan, which is updated every year, and just a way for that commitment to be solidified. So a couple quick images on what this could look like. Again, it focuses on what is our service today, what are those 30-minute or less headways that are out there on HART's network, and definitely scalable in terms of density. We had some questions about, we have this map, this draft map of existing and emerging corridors, but what about those areas that aren't currently served today? Well, we feel having these policies within the comprehensive plan will serve as a nice kind of bouncing off point, teeing off point for those future routes or future areas that would benefit for transit service. So having that incorporated in the comp plan could inform other considerations with rezonings, future updates to the TDP, and just have a nice consolidated place to have those conversations about where transit service is needed. But to be clear, the bonuses that are proposed with this are only for those existing corridors. So to quickly recap next steps, we'd really love your feedback today and integrate that into those draft policies and map. Based on the current schedule, we expect to bring back a draft policy language to you at your July meeting. And we'll continue the coordination with HART and county staff as we work through the implementing regulations, TDPs, and other related planning efforts. And that's all we have.
All right. Are there any comments, questions, or discussions on this item from the commissioners? Commissioner Bernstein.
First of all, Katrina Elizabeth, great presentation. Thank you for that. I wanted to just understand a little more, if I could, the collaboration piece of this. It sounds like we're working very closely with HART in getting to this point, and then at some point, the collaboration, does it pivot to the TPO, or are they involved throughout as well?
So I'm a part of the TPO staff, and Beth Alden is integrally involved with that. Melissa, do you have some?
Sure. This has been something that has just sort of been an agency-wide approach. So Planning Commission and TPO have been working jointly on this. It stems from your strategic plan, which talked about looking at ways we could better link land use and transportation. And that was like the number one goal, I think, of the strategic plan. And so we've been looking for these opportunities, and then collectively have been working with HART on this concept and the county, because this would apply in the unincorporated counties plan. We also have shared the concept with the city of Tampa. Their form and of existing development street network is a little different, and the amount of bus service is a little different, so it might be a little different concept in the city.
I appreciate it, and I'd love to see the collaboration. Thanks again.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Yes, Commissioner Kress.
Maybe it's going a little too far, but I wonder if you could put in encouragement for advantages for transit, such as signal prioritization, maybe a transit-only lane, shelters that are placed out there, even bus on shoulder. That's being, I think, experimented with over in Pinellas County. So, I don't know whether you can sneak any of that in, but I think anything you can do to give transit an advantage, I think, would be good.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. We'll definitely take that back, and those are things that we outlined in the mobility section a bit more too, so definitely tying that back into this policy language as well. Thank you.
Can I ask a question with the, I'll let you go first, Commissioner Rodriguez. I saw you waving down there.
Thank you. I really want to put a plug in for what T-BART is doing on the bus rapid transit, and as well, the passenger ferry service. Not only are we looking at it from East County over to McDill, but this is a service that continues to grow throughout the Tampa Bay region, and how those modes of transit connect in with our HART bus routes and those development opportunities, the transportation land use link at those opportunities is going to be tremendous and needs to have guidance now. And we're, as a planning commission, we're looking at this from the long range perspective. So I know it's too soon to talk about the specific incentives for specific projects, but we really need to bring these other modes into the conversation, these other agencies, and have a holistic approach. And frankly, if we have time, and perhaps we could workshop this in between one of our, between our afternoon and evening sessions, and just do a quick look at maps and look at some of these future corridors and how they would be affected. I think that would be, and give your team some feedback on that.
Thank you. All right, I was wondering for myself, what does HART say about all this? This would obviously put great amounts of pressure directly on Hart. And I know the obvious answer is, well, great, but if we look at Hart's past record, it hasn't been. So I'm just wondering if this works and it's great and it's, well, we get all this bus emphasis corridor stuff going and we tie land use to it and we start building stuff and forcing more people onto the bus, can Hart, okay, not forcing.
Okay. Encouraging.
Encouraging, whatever you want to call it. Hart still has to pick up those pieces. And again, if you look at Hart's past record, hopefully we have throughout this process, we're looking at reality, right? Does Hart see that as something feasible, or, I mean, there's a rapid rush towards this transit. I'm wondering if there's real ground underneath it when the rubber meets the road, right?
I'm happy to answer that. We did present this to the Hart Strategic Planning Committee, and they were very receptive to the idea. Their executive director has also been very receptive to the idea. I think the further discussion needs to occur as to whether or not it applies to every corridor that they currently have a bus route on, or is it a subset of them that they want to focus on. But I think they acknowledge that through the last changes to their routes in Mission Max, they've really kind of cut the service to the bone, yeah. And there's not a lot of anything extra there. So they are committed that these areas continue to be served, but that is the discussion, that the timing of this with their transit development plan is key to make sure that they are committed to these same routes, because we don't want to make decisions on land use based on, without the appropriate commitment from the transit.
Yeah, that would be my only worry in this. I mean, I'm all for, and we've had conversations before, you know me, I'm all about putting like dedicated bus lanes down certain roads. So I'm not Mr. Non-bus guy. I'm very, but you have to do things in a certain way, or else you're really just spinning the wheel for no reason. 10, 15 years from now, I'll be looking back at this and saying, oh, I was chairman and we passed this, and now the buses are even worse. You know what I mean? So we're all trying to get to the same place. We just have to be kind of cautious of how we get to it. And I guess one question I would have is, has this been quantified in any way? It's hard to know how much this is going to cost, period. Like I can hear about this needs to happen and that needs to happen, but even in just rough numbers, you know what I mean?
Well, I think the cost, what we're basing this on is their existing service.
Okay.
So the cost would be the same as their operations are today.
Okay.
This is scalable, that if, the sales tax passes and they have additional service, we could look at other corridors that routes get added to. But, I mean, we wanted to be very realistic and say this is what is based on what Hart can do today.
Right, okay. Perfect. That's just what I was looking for. Thank you. All right. Commissioner Kress.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we need to make as many transit-ready moves as we can. I appreciate the lack of funding that Hart currently has, but again, referendum in November. And I think Commissioner Rodriguez brought up an excellent point. I did kind of wonder why we were calling them bus emphasis as opposed to just a more generic transit emphasis. If we are planning long range, who knows what's out there next? So we might just want to be a little bit more generic and not restrict ourselves to the word bus.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely something we can consider and take back. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Bernstein.
Well, I guess at the risk of blurring concepts, and thanks again, this is probably more directed at our commission, but it does harken back, Commissioner Powell, to item 4B on our agenda regarding the TPO apportionment plan to me, because it's another example of how collaboratively these agencies can work with one another, and I question personally whether we can bank on that kind of collaboration when some of the agencies involved in that process will no longer have direct participation. They'll be advisory. I worry about that. I guess it's one more thing to perhaps convey to the powers that be, because this is the kind of collaboration we need on the transportation issue. We should never take it for granted.
Points, Commissioner Bernstein. Is there any more discussion on this item from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time, we will thank you for a really great presentation, and we will move on to our next item of business. 5D, PCCPA 21-09, Future Land Use Map Amendment, East James L. Redmond Parkway, south of East Trapnell Road, and the presenter is Krista Kelly.
Good evening, Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff. I'm presenting today Comprehensive Plan 2109, a Plant City Future Land Use Map Amendment. And this map amendment had come before you once before in February. It has been continued from the December cycle for some of you. Due to annexation issues, it was delayed and now it's back. As you can see on the Plant City vision map, the site is located in the southern portion of Plant City in unincorporated county. It is abutting the city boundary of Plant City. Specifically, it's east of James L. Redmond Parkway, south of Trapnell Road, west of Bug Road, and north of Kilgore Road. This is an aerial of the site. As you see, it's outlined in pink to give you an idea of the existing land uses in the area. The site itself is predominantly agricultural in character. There are a few structures on site, agricultural buildings, and a few homes. Surrounding the site, it's predominantly agricultural to the north and to the west. To the east, there are scattered rural home sites. And to the south, there are a greater concentration of rural residential development. To give you a context of this amendment, it is a privately initiated plan amendment. It's considered a regular amendment because it's greater than 50 acres. In fact, it's 117.87 acres. Currently, it's pending a voluntary annexation into the city of Plant City. The applicant's requesting a change from Hillsborough County's Residential 1 land use category to Plant City's Residential 4 category. This is the adopted future land use map showing the map today. It's designated Residential 1, and it is in the unincorporated county. And as you see, the area surrounding it in the unincorporated county is also Residential 1. To the west and north, the area is within the boundary of Plant City, and it is designated mixed-use gateway. This is a specific land use category that has greater intensities than the surrounding area. The white area is a transitional area, and the green area on the lower west, I can show you here, is natural preservation, just reflecting that there are some wetlands in the area. However, it hasn't been delineated. This shows the site now, the proposed Residential 4 land use category, and also showing a transition in the intensities. Residential 4 is a residential category that is the lowest density permitted within Plant City. The impact of this development essentially would be an increase in the number of dwelling units. Currently, the Residential 1 land use category requires locational criteria, which it does not meet for non-residential uses. And the proposed residential category, Residential 4, does not permit non-residential uses. This is a briefing, so I'm just going to give you an idea of the timeline. Currently, it's scheduled for the Planning Board presentation June 22nd and going to the City Commission for a transmittal hearing July 25th. At this time, the adoption hearing will be announced in the future. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this.
Thank you. All right, were there any questions or comments, discussion from the commissioners on this one? No, not seeing any. Well, thank you for your time and move on to our next one. It is 5E PCCPA 22-01. It's a future land use map amendment, east of Charlie Taylor Road, north of East Baker Street. And the presenter is Mark Hudson. Your mic, turn your mic on. There you go.
Again, Mark Hudson, Planning Commission staff. This is the second of 3 plan amendments that we'll be presenting to you next month for your consideration. As already noted by the chairman, it's PCCPA 22-01. This is the location of the map amendment on the Plant City Vision map. You can see it's east of Charlie Taylor Road, north of East Baker Street, which many of you may know as US 92. It's west of North Wiggins Road and south of South Frontage Road. This is an aerial of the site. You can see that the area that is affected is surrounded by the lavender dashed line. This aerial is somewhat dated. There's been a lot of development to the north and also to the west, and I'll mention that a little bit more further into my presentation. A little bit of background. This is privately initiated. Unlike the last plan amendment, it's small scale, so it only requires 1 hearing date in front of the City Commission. It comes in at a little bit less than 10 acres. Currently, it's a Hillsborough County Residential 1 plan category, and it's proposed for Plant City Industrial in the I-4 Tech overlay. And it is part of a pending annexation. This shows you the future land use map as it stands today. You can see to the north and to the west the gray color of industrial for Plant City. The ultimate goal of the applicant is to make this part of that development, and those other areas are currently being developed with those uses as we speak. To the east is the same land use that the property currently has, which is Hillsborough County Residential 1, and to the south is Hillsborough County Residential 4. At that location, they're predominantly actually in commercial uses and particularly dealing with auto and truck sales, and that'll be more reflective in some of the aerials and photos. And this shows you how the land use would change if it was adopted by the Plant City Commission to the industrial plan category color of gray, similar to the north and to the west. What are the potential impacts? Currently, there are entitlements on the property for 9 dwelling units. That would change. The industrial plan category in Plant City does not allow the consideration of residential uses and would allow up to 210,000 square feet of uses. One thing I did also want to mention concerning the map, in your packet this month and the packet next month, there's an existing land use map. It doesn't really give a very good picture and maybe somewhat misleading based on the Hillsborough County property appraiser's information being out of date. And I plan to go out to the site and take an extensive amount of photos and walk you through it to actually show you the recent development along Charlie Taylor Road. As Crystal went through the last item, these are the key dates for this item. We're coming back to get your recommendation on June 13th, and the planning board will also be on June 22nd. That's at City Hall in Plant City at 8:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. And the adoption date, as this only requires 1 hearing date, has not been set at this point, but it will be renoticed to everyone within 250 feet, so they're apprised of that date. And with that, Commissioners, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Are there any questions on this item from the Commissioners' discussion? No, not seeing any. We'll thank you for the presentation, sir, and move on to our next item of business. And that is P5F, PCCPA 22-02, Future Land Use Map Amendment, East Park Road, south of East Baker Street, and the presenter is Krista Kelly.
Thank you, Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff. I'm presenting Future Land Use Map CPA 2202. This also is a amendment submitted in the March 2022 cycle for Plant City. As you see on the vision map, the site is located in the eastern portion of Plant City. The 2 stars indicate the general location. It's in 2 geographic locations consisting of 5 properties that are, some are contiguous and some are not contiguous, but they are related to the parent parcel that they are adjacent to, the larger parcel that I'll show you shortly. Specifically, the parcels are located east of Park Road, south of East Baker Street, or US Highway 92, west of Wiggins Road, and northeast of Cornett Road. Okay, this is the aerial, and this gives you a better idea of the multiple parcels. As you can see, there's 5 in total. For instance, this parcel includes the lower portion, however, that is not part of the amendment. And then there is another parcel, 2 parcels to the east, the long linear strip also included. As you can see, the surrounding area is a mixture of uses. To the north is Lakeside Station. It's a planned development intended for industrial and logistical uses. And as you can see, there's an emerging trend of industrial uses at the intersection of Park Road and East Baker Street. The remaining area is open at this time. However, it is used at times for agricultural uses. To the south of the area, you see these water bodies. They are settling ponds. This area, this open area, is part of a vacated phosphate mine, the Cornet Mine. It's over 800 acres. Portions of it are used for agriculture, and at this time it's primarily vacated. To the east, you'll see more agricultural properties, and then further to the east this is Wiggins Road and Baker Street. This strip of amendment property is adjacent to an established residential neighborhood that extends along Wiggins Road and also rural home sites on large tracts. To give you background, it is a privately initiated amendment. It's 62.12 acres in size. 38 acres are currently retain a Hillsborough County designation of light industrial, and 9.74 acres retain the designation of residential 2. The applicant is requesting that 54.5 acres be amended to the industrial designation for Plant City, and 8.007 acres be amended to residential 4. This is the adopted future land use map, and as you see, the site outlined in black is currently light industrial, as is the surrounding area reflective of the Cornet Mine to the south. To the north, this area is mixed use, residential, commercial, and industrial. That's Lakeside Station, reflecting the approved plan development for industrial and logistical uses. To the east, you see that the property is designated residential 2, as is the residential area to the east. And to the south, additional residential development. The proposed change, it's hard to see. The colors are not coming through very well, but the applicant is requesting light industrial for the majority of the properties to the south, and residential 4 to the northern portion of that linear strip. The tiny small sliver at the bottom is also going to to industrial. The main impact is the increase in the potential number of dwelling units, which is quite minimal, 13 dwelling units. But there is a significant reduction in the amount of allowable square footage due to the reduction in in floor area ratio from 0.75 for the light industrial category in the county to 0.50 to the FAR for Plant City. Mark and I have both gone over the timeline, so you can see that this amendment will be coming back to you in June and going to the Planning Board in the 22nd, and in July going to the City Commission. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Are there, yes, Commissioner Buzza.
Just a quick question, Krista. I'm pretty familiar with this property. The cutouts are very bizarre. Is this purposely for buffer zones for the development of that industrial subdivision. The line, you know, we got the eastern piece, which is, you know, the tiny little sliver running north-south. I assume, is there a background to why this?
I can speak in general to the non-contiguous nature of these properties. As part of the application, they indicated they wanted to provide roadway access and facilities for stormwater. And these parcels are remnant, or they're associated with the parent parcels in Lakeside Station, and they wanted to utilize those properties for that reason. But it has a strange configuration. The linear strip on the right, there was some discussion that I would let the applicant further explain about using that for employee access. Consideration of it. There's no plan or no, you know, firm description of how that would work, but that kind of explains the linear shape of that property. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments, discussions from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time. Well, thank you for your presentation and move on to our next item of business. 5G, Section 27, amending parking requirements in the central business district, in the central business and channel districts of the Land Development Code. Presenter is Danny Collins.
Hey, good evening. Sam Thomas with the Planning Commission staff. This next item is a briefing for a privately initiated LDC text amendment for parking requirements in the city of Tampa's downtown business district. Would you like me to start over? Okay. So this is a briefing on a privately initiated LDC text amendment for parking requirements in the central business district and the channel district. And I'll be turning it over to LaShawn Dog with City of Tampa staff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. LaShawn Dock here with the City of Tampa Development Coordination, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon. This is a privately initiated amendment, as was introduced earlier. This is a part of the January 2021 amendment cycle. The applicant is Karen Crest. This is being represented as a part of the Tampa Downtown Partnerships request. This request includes areas of changes of Chapter 27 zoning code in 3 areas. So one is the Central Business District. The other area is the Channel District, and both of those contain modifications to the required parking for the majority of the uses in both of those special districts. The last area of change is in 27-132, which is our regulations governing our special uses. And that contains a small change where there is a use that is listed under the special use criteria for CBD, and it is being moved to the CBD district section of the code. So the changes that are included also, in addition to reducing the parking, include changes in the Channel District. Their parking table, which was a separate parking table, has been combined into the use table so that it is one table, just to consolidate the code. Anytime we look at a modification of the code, we look at consolidating it when possible, in addition to making general cleanups on it. So that's a brief overview of the changes before you. I am available if you have any questions as far as scheduling. We're looking to come back before you, commissioners, next month for our public hearing, and then we would move forward to City Council in August, and then for first reading, and City Council for second reading in September. And I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dock. Are there any questions or comments, discussion from the commissioners on this item? Yes, Commissioner Bernstein.
Well, I guess we now see what's behind the curtain, because I know you were referring to this at some point. I look forward to seeing this rolled out in further detail next month with the applicant, but to me, this represents a potential step in the right direction in terms of solving some of the challenges that I know we're facing in terms of redeveloping the downtown core and overcoming the existing challenges with these parking requirements. So yeah, I look forward to that discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Are there any more comments, questions, discussion on this item? Not seeing any. Well, thank you for the presentation and move on to our last item of business. 5H, 10 areas of Section 27 related to commercial vehicles in residential districts, and a lot of other stuff here. And the staff presenter is Jennifer Malone.
Jennifer Malone. Last but not least, the City of Tampa has 10 publicly initiated LDC amendments coming forward. We're just briefing on them today, but they'll be before you for action next month. Those are related to commercial vehicles in residential districts, food trucks, alcoholic beverage sales enforcement, bonus provision for gray water, home-based businesses, development review compliance definition, transfer of development rights, street cafe, storefront residential parking, and formal decisions. A lot of these were from the legislative changes that our government made last summer. So Eric Cotton with the City of Tampa is on the line to answer any questions and provide a brief overview on those if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. Are there any questions or comments, discussions from the commissioners on this item at this time? Not seeing any. Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank everyone for their time who showed up. And we'll move on to our next item. 6, Executive Director's Report.
And given the time, I'll just say that you were emailed out my report on Friday, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have other business, chair's business. I have none. Old business, I did have an item I wanted to bring up under old business. At our last meeting, I was a bit remiss. We discussed Ms. Zornita's performance review, but I don't believe we actually took a moment to speak about her compensation package at that point in time. So speaking with Tracy, I figured I should bring it up at this point in time and probably direct Ms. Zornita to put it on our June agenda of things to talk about, because clearly she's not going to do it of her own accord, so, which is probably appropriate. And in between then and now, I'd also like to have her get each of the planning commissioners a copy of her current contract agreement and just some information on merit increases and cost of living and any sort of comparisons you might think may be relevant for the commissioners to have as information going into the June meeting, so we can have a discussion about her compensation. And my apologies again for having that slide by me in the last meeting. And that's all from me for old business. So new business, does anyone have any new business? Nope. Not seeing any, we'll move on to committee reports. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything for the TPO, but I think we already had a robust discussion about that. Affordable Housing Board did meet today, and I thought some of the encouraging news was that we were able to get, I think it was $24 million from the funds that were left over from the Affordable Rescue Plan, and then there's still another 9.9 or 9.95 million that's been like unaccounted for, and all the other agencies have like submitted for like projects and things like that. So board did request to have the BOCC allocate that remaining 9.95 to affordable housing. That's it.
All right, Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you. For the city's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, we met on April 20th. Received a general update on all of the housing and community development activities. A couple of things I did want to mention. The city's going forward with their infill affordable housing program phase 3, and that's RFP is going to be hitting the streets if it hasn't already for their third phase of that program, where you're taking lots around the city and the city's providing them for affordable housing opportunities to developers. So great program. And then there is going to be the annual homeownership event in celebration of National Homeownership Month. That's going to be 25 June from 9 to 3 at Tampa Convention Center. All sorts of information and resources available for the home buying public, first-time homeowners, getting them the information they need in these tough times. So I wanted to mention that event coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Any more committee reports? Nope, none. All right, that is the end of our agenda. So with that, I will end this meeting, and I will see everybody within a half an hour, 6:10, is that good? Yeah, 6:10, we'll see everybody 6:10 for the public hearings. Meeting adjourned.